Dawn seeped across the city like watered wine, pale and thin and slow to warm the stone. In the hand solar, the shutters were set wide to the east, and the first light found the dust that hung in the air, a gentle flock drifting in lazy circles. Eddard Stark stood at the open casement and felt the day come on his face. The city below him carried the usual clatter. Carts rattling toward the fish market, the call and answer of sellers and apprentices, a rooster determined to outshout them all. But under it ran a muted strain, the strange quiet of people speaking too low because someone is ill in the next room. The rumor had already reached the outer wards. The king had gone hunting. The king had wrestled a boar. The king had come home on a litter with a wound in his belly that soaked through the linen like a spilled cask. Everyone had a cousin who'd seen it with his own eyes. Ned's hands were braced on the sill, knuckles whitening as the wind lifted the edge of the parchment that lay on his table behind him. The book he'd fought so hard to find lay open beside it, some heavy genealogical thing with its edges furred by years and sweat. The names marched there in careful script as they did in his head now, line by line, father to son to son to son, the steady descent of dark hair and dark eyes through the branches of an ancient tree. His own reflection stared back from the leaded glass, distorted by ripples in the pane, and for a moment he saw another man layered over him, a boy with a shorter blade and no gray in his beard, a winter wind icing his nose as he swung down in judgment before a rough-hewn block. Then it was only himself again, a tired man in a hot city with more to do than sleep would permit and less time than duty deserved. A rap came to the door, soft but brisk, and he turned. "Enter," he said, and the weight of that word was a stone dropped in a pond. Renly Baratheon slipped through, all green velvet and scented oil, but the usual flourish had abandoned him. He closed the door with a careful hand and stood a moment with his back pressed to it, as if to keep the entire court from spilling in after him. His young face, so often arranged into what it thought was a winning smile, had gone grave as an icon. "He is asleep," Renly said without preamble. "Sleep or the milk of the poppy. The maester argues over terms with himself while the rest of us stand at the foot of the bed like carved saints." "How grave?" Ned asked. Renly's throat worked. "Grave enough that I find myself speaking with you and not telling jests. The men who carried him saw his blood. The smell of it has not left their noses. It will be a miracle if he..." He stopped, and the unspoken word hung like a drawn bowstring. "Lives." Ned's fingers strayed to the parchment he had written in the deep night and sealed with hot wax. It was the thing he had never meant to write, the thing he had thought he could avoid with patience and careful truth. He should have been born to another place, he thought, not for the first time. Some small keep where the hardest duty was to part a drunk man's hand from a poacher's snare. Fate had seen fit to wedge him here where the kings and their games turned duty into a knife without a hilt. "I must speak to him," Ned said, "while his mind is his own." Renly tilted his head, amused despite himself. "Varys says you are too honest to move quickly, Lord Stark. That you will count the steps and weigh the cost until the floor wears a path beneath your boots. I see today you mean to prove the spider wrong." "Varys is wrong as often as he is right," Ned said, then added, "but not about my honesty." "You told her, then?" Renly's eyes sharpened, green pins set in a lovely face. "You told the queen what you found?" Ned looked past him, past the room, back into the days when the boy he had been would never have thought to weigh a lie. "I gave her a chance to take her children and go," he said. The memory of that conversation had grown a second skin in his mind already, tender to the touch. The queen's eyes like polished amber, cold and shining, the small smile that had not reached them as he spoke. He saw again her hand trailing across a table edge as she rose to go, the light on her fingers like sunlight on a blade. She had not denied him. That was the bitter seed. Madness. Renly's voice held no censure, only astonishment. "She will not go. She cannot go. She lives in the den and knows the habits of the beast better than any of us. She will bare her throat only to show the gold under her skin. She may yet surprise us," Ned said, knowing she would not. "The king." Renly chewed his lip. "Pycelle has bled him. Varys says bleeding a man with a hole in him is a scholar's way to ease his dying. Littlefinger says if the king dies from bleeding, it will be the least surprising thing Pycelle has accomplished this year. I say nothing, because I am Robert's brother, and if I speak of his dying, it will be treated like a claim upon his chair. I have no wish to stir that pot while the lid rattles by itself. Your wish is wise. Ned lifted the parchment. But the lid rattles nonetheless. What is that? Renly asked. The words the king must put his name to, Ned said. A letter appointing me protector of the realm until the matter of succession is settled. Renly's gaze flicked to the open book on the table. You mean to settle it by quill, then by blade? I mean to set it in order, Ned said. However means are required. Renly came away from the door and paced to the window, looking down into the brightening city. The order you imagine treads on so many toes they could pave the road from here to the mother house with bruised feet. She will not let you do this, you know. I do not need her leave. Ned felt the old Stark quiet settle on him, a winter-bred stillness that was neither heat nor cold but the absence of both, a light blown out to save the wick. I need the king's. A soft scuffing at the lintel and a head appeared in the crack of the door, silvered and bald and smiling without baring teeth. My lords, Varys murmured, if I might be permitted to be merely inconvenient for a heartbeat or two. You are generally more than that, Renly said, but he waved him in. Varys slid forward on quiet shoe leather, his hands folded like a penitent's. His grace sleeps. He wakes long enough to curse the boar and the men who did not spear it sooner, then sleeps again. He has a remarkable tolerance for pain, or perhaps just for anger. The eunuch's eyes, unreadable as polished shell, touched the parchment on Ned's table and the book beside it. And we, I fear, have less tolerance for delay. Ned nodded once. Have the king's squire roused. I will see Robert now. That will please none of the maesters and half of the council, Varys said. But then, little of what we do will please anyone today. He turned, and his voice lost what little music it had. One whisper among many, my lord. The queen sits in her solar with her children and her brother's men posted outside the door. She has summoned Pycelle twice and refused Lord Stannis's letter, unopened. She has sent none to the king's bedside. Stannis has written? Renly's chin came up. Varys found it necessary to admire the pattern on a flagstone near his shoe. He has, my lord, arrived by galley in the night past. Whatever else might be said of Lord Stannis, he counts the hours with care. Ned felt the shape of the path beneath his boots, the path Varys had accused him of wearing smooth. It was there before him again, only there was no time now to go slowly. Very well, bring the squire, and Ser Barristan, and Janos Slint. Renly's head jerked. The city watch? They are the city's peace, Ned said. Let us see if their captain knows what the word means. Varys bent at the waist, a hint of mockery buried in courtesy, and slid from the room. Renly watched the door close. You choose your allies from a bowl of eels today. I choose what I must. Ned took up the letter and checked the seal once more, as if the soft red lake of wax might tell him whether it would survive the sea of the day ahead. He glanced past Renly at the light growing in the window, and in that thin gold he saw another dawn. Frost on the yard at Winterfell, breath pluming before men's mouths. His boys standing straight back to watch as he did what was required before the old gods and his people. He never liked that duty, but it had been a slow teacher. It had taught him that mercy and justice could not be drawn apart like two cords. They twisted into one rope, and you bound yourself with it or you were forever slipping. Walk with me, he said, and the younger man fell into step. Stone had a way of keeping secrets. It also had a way of murmuring them if you pressed your ear against its flank. The halls of the Red Keep, full of galleries and hidden turns, had learned to drink words and give them back in whispers. Today those whispers were sloshing over with fear. Servants veered aside with their heads down and their eyes lifted from the corners, as if they could drink the look on Ned's face and live on it. They passed a pair of washerwomen with their heads together, hands scarred by the lime, and a novice septa with a tray of candles whose nervous lips moved over prayers. The king's guard in their white cloaks stood like bright statues at doors to which Ned did not go. He kept his mind on the black doors he did need and the men who stood beyond them. Ser Barristan Selmy had a face like a burnished coin, hammered by years until it was simple and plain and true. He bowed his white head when Ned arrived, and a sadness lay in the quiet of his mouth that told Ned as much as any report. "He sleeps," Barristan said softly. "As long as he sleeps, he does not try to stand. As long as he does not try to stand, he does not bleed again." "Will he wake?" Ned asked. "At intervals. The old man there would keep him drowned," Barristan said, and gave Pycelle a glance like a weight set on a scales. "I think he needs to wake once more." Pycelle rustled forward, all chain and beard, his heavy eyelids blinking like a tortoise. "My lord hand," he murmured, touching his chest. "I must protest." "Later," Ned said, and there was iron in his voice he had not intended. "I would speak to my king." They went in together, and the heat struck him first. The chambers smelled of sweat and crushed herbs and something sweet meant to be medicine and failing. Robert lay under linen that had once been fine and now was spotted and damp. His chest rose like bellows, slowly, the hair black on it as a bear's pelt. The wound itself was bandaged beneath the sheet, and Ned was grateful not to look upon it. He'd seen enough men open to know the sound they made when they understood their lives were spilling out ahead of their consent. Renly stayed near the door, suddenly a boy again with nothing to do with his hands but fold and unfold them. Barristan took his place at the bed's foot like a man guarding a bridge everyone else insists is a meadow. Pycelle fussed at his jars. Varys had arranged himself in the shadow of a pillar as a well-placed shadow. Ned stepped to the bedside and laid his hand upon Robert's forearm. The skin was hot and dry. "Robert," he said, not loudly, but with the tone of a man calling another back across a distance. "Robert, wake." The king's eyes rolled under their lids, then parted like doors battered by a siege. He stared up at the ceiling as if it were attacking him. "Stag," he muttered, then, "Boar, the bastard. Where is my spear?" "You drove it deeper than any man would have," Renly said, finding a smile he did not feel. "We have the head sent to the kitchens. There will be a stew." Robert turned his head to find the voice and saw his brother and puffed a breath that might have been a laugh around the pain. Then his gaze snagged on Ned as if he were a brace that could hold him up. "Ned," he said, and the name was heavy as a hammer. "You stubborn wolf. You came." "I came," Ned said. He did not know how to do anything else. "You must listen to me. Always the speeches with you," Robert groaned, though his hand found Ned's wrist and pressed hard, grateful as a drowning man for a pole. "Say it. Varys will say I mustn't get excited. Let him stick his potions up his." He coughed, and the sound was low and ugly. "Say it." Ned could have walked around the bed and across his life and back again before he found an easy way to place the next words. He had tried to give Cersei an escape. He had tried to put off the saying, and each attempt to spare someone he had loved had brought him here. He looked at Robert, the boy who had been his brother in all but blood, and saw the man whom the years had hardened and fattened and battered but not wholly defeated. He did not reach for grace. He reached for truth. "Your children are not yours." Silence took the room by the throat. The wind at the shutters ceased, or else no one could hear it. Pycelle, who had never been able to be still in his life, froze with his hand above a pot like a falconer holding a glove for a bird that will not come to him. Robert's eyes did not move. He might have been carved from oak. "Say that again," he said. "They are Lannister's get," Ned said. The name would not do Cersei justice, so he gave it to the act. "Jaime's." The king's breath came in as if it had struck a cliff. "You lie," he said, but there was no surprise in his voice, only horror at the thing that had been called into light with real breath. "By all the gods, you lie." "I wish I did," Ned said, and gently detached Robert's hand from his wrist. He took the book from his belt and set it on the coverlet, as if the pages were another man at the bed for comfort. "There is proof if you require it. Jon Arryn found it. He died for it. I found it because he died." Robert did not look down. He was looking inward at something with a mouth full of teeth. "I will kill her," he said softly. "I will," he choked again. His hand twitched toward his side. "I will kill them," he added in a voice gone flat as slate. "No," Ned said. The word was out of him before his mind could count it. And when it reached the air, it settled there, a boundary drawn in an unseen chalk. "No, Robert. The children did not choose their making. You will not touch them while I breathe." The king's eyes slid to him, and there was a terrible child in them. A boy who had wanted a toy and had been refused it whilst crowned. "You would oppose me," he said wonderingly. "I would take that sin on myself if it meant sparing them from yours," Ned said, thinking of girls with wolves in their hearts and boys who dreamed of honor. "You have called me brother. Let me earn it." Pycelle found his courage in the corner of his tongue. "Your grace, this is not." Robert flung an arm at him that made the jars rattle. "Out," he said. "All of you, no, not you, Ned. You stay. Barristan, stand where you stand and stop looking like a storybook. Renly, be quiet. Varys, if I catch you peeping into my soul with those fish eyes, I will have you put in a jar to keep company with whatever you've lost between your legs." Varys lowered his head with the tremulous patience of a man who had been insulted by kings and lived to advise their sons. "Write," Robert said to Ned. "Write what must be written. Name a protector." He sucked in air. "Name yourself, Joff." He gagged on the name as if it were a gristle that would not go down. "The boy is not mine. Gods curse her. Gods curse me for not seeing. I will sign. And you?" He lifted a shaking finger that did not do what he asked of it. "You will take her. Do you hear me? The queen. Take her and—" His mouth twisted. "Do not let me die with her sitting in the next room and smiling." Ned stood very straight. He felt the pull of old vows and older kindness. "I will take her," he said. "And the whelps?" Robert muttered, then shut his eyes because it cost him something to keep them open and something to let them close, and there was no economy that would balance the books. "Do not let me see them." Ned dipped a quill in ink with a hand that trembled. Not with fear, but with the strain of holding too much in one vessel. He wrote, and the words were plain and hard and unforgivable. He put the hot wax on them and pressed the royal seal into it, and the impression held. When it was done, Barristan took the parchment as a man might lift a babe and set it aside from harm. Robert lay panting, as if the speaking of truth had been the climb of a mountain, and he had not had enough water for it. "Go then," he said, so quietly that Renly had to lean forward to catch the words. "Go. I cannot die with that woman still breathing the same air as me." Ned bowed his head once. It was not victory, this only the absence of a worse defeat. He met Renly's eye and saw the boy's mind racing, counting banners, counting cousins, counting doors. "You asked me to be quicker, Lord Renly," Ned said. "Come and see a northern man make haste." They left the sick room to Pycelle's busy hands and Varys's quiet feet. The corridor outside had gathered people the way cliffs gather spray. Pages craning for sightlines, ladies whispering into kerchiefs, Ser Meryn Trant standing with a face like a dull blade. Renly brushed past like a hare given the scent of hounds. "We will need men," he said. "We have men," Ned answered. "My household guard, Ser Barristan. We will have the city watch." He spotted a page he recognized and sent him sprinting for Jory Castle, for Tomard, for Varley, for every man who wore gray in the capital. He sent another to summon Janos Slint to the Queen's Solar. "Little finger," Renly said without liking the taste of the word. "He is not a man," Ned said. "He is a habit, and habits, if ignored, persist." They walked the east gallery toward the tower that housed the Queen's apartments, glassed windows to their right gathering light. The smell of the sea came through gaps, salt and rot and something green. They passed a tapestry of some hunting scene in which dogs leapt forever toward a stag that never turned. Renly's stride lengthened until he seemed to be in two places at once, leapfrogging between impatience and fear. Ned's limp was a slow bell behind them. The hurt from Jaime Lannister's alleyway treachery spoke in every step, a reminder of the night when the rules had been set aside and he had nearly lost more than honor. Jory Castle and a half-score of Winterfell men fell in with them like a wave finding its old course. Jory's eyes asked their question. Ned answered with a small motion of his head that set his jaw. Jory's expression did not flinch. He had the look of a man who would pour boiling water upon his own thigh if told the duty required it. "We are the king's men," he said. "We are," Ned replied, "and we do this in his name." A knot of gold cloaks came around a corner ahead of them, the brassy glint of their helms catching sun. Janos Slint lumbered at their head, a thick body in a thick surcoat, jowls quivering. He stopped when he saw Ned and made a show of a bow that was too shallow by half. "Lord Hand," he boomed with the pleasantness of a man who expects a bribe. "I had word you were seeking me out. I am ever eager to be of service to the realm." "The realm asks you to obey your oaths," Ned said. "You will bring your men to the Queen's Solar. There will be no swords drawn unless mine is drawn first. There will be no shouting. There will be no running. You understand me, Lord Slint?" The watch captain licked his lips. His eyes went to Renly's fine green and back to Ned's tired gray. It seemed a fraction of a moment too long before. He nodded. "Aye," he said. "The watch keeps the peace." "Today," Ned said, "the peace must be kept with care." Janos bobbed again and turned to bark orders, and his men shuffled their formation into something that could pass for neat in a bad light. Ned's own soldiers tightened. He could feel, more than see, the tuning of them as if they were a single bowstring. He had marched with men too long not to know when a group had decided to act as one instrument. He had never liked the music that came after. Varys materialized at his elbow like a cat who had always been in the room but chose this moment to be noticed. "A thought," he murmured. "The Queen's younger children are with her. The older boy is not." "Where?" Ned asked without stopping. "The practice yard. Ser Sandor watches him crack wood with steel and admire the shape of his own shadow." Varys's smile did not reach his eyes, which was just as well. "A second thought. The hound's loyalty is a peculiar blade. It may slip in one's hand. Keep him from the Queen," Ned said. "Or keep the Queen from him." "Ah," said Varys. "You have the nicest way of setting impossible tasks." The Queen's corridor felt like the throat of a bell. It held quiet and gave it shape. 2 Lannister guards stood before the carved doors in crimson cloaks and polished mail, their hands clasped over pommels. They saw the line of men coming and straightened until their feet were welded into the stone. One found his voice. "My lords," he began. "Stand aside," Renly snapped. "This is the Queen's." "It is the King's," Ned said, and his voice was not loud, but it filled the space between them. "By his order." The guard looked from him to the swarm of gray cloaks behind him, to the gold cloaks to the left and right, to Barristan Selmy with his white cloak bright as snow. Whatever he saw was not the scene he had imagined when he woke. He stepped aside. The other followed, eyes like coins, seeing nothing but determining worth. Renly moved to push the door wide, but Ned lifted his hand and did it himself. The wood was heavy and smooth under his palms. The Solar wore its wealth easily, like a noblewoman wears pearls when she feeds her birds. The windows admitted a sheet of mourning. The carpets had a fat pile that hushed steps. The tables gleamed under their wax. The Queen stood in the center of the room as if she had grown there. She had dressed with deliberation. Gown like beaten sunlight, hair coiled and pinned to show the line of her neck, a ring for every finger save the one that held the empty band she'd been given on a day when she had thought crowns weighed less. Myrcella sat on a bench by the window with a cat in her lap, the animal's tail switching in small, offended motions. Tommen stood by a tower of blocks, and his piece halted halfway to the top when the men came in, his mouth a small O. Behind the Queen were 2 knights of Lannister, men Ned knew by sight and not by name, their hands near their hilts, their faces a mask that poorly concealed what their stomachs did. Cersei Lannister's eyes did not widen. She took in the men, the colors, the fact of Janos Slint and the fact of Barristan and the fact of Renly, and she smiled with her mouth and not at all with her eyes. "Lord Stark," she said, How pleasant to see you. You might have sent a note. I would have had fresh almonds brought up. My lady, Ned said, and the words tasted like wood. By command of the king, I place you under arrest for high treason against the crown and the realm. Myrcella's small hand tightened in the cat's fur until it mewled. Tommen's block fell and knocked 3 more with it. The sound of wood on wood cascaded on the rugs and died there. The Lannister men shifted, and in the corner Renly's hand ghosted toward the hilt he wore as an ornament but remembered today as a tool. The queen's head canted as if she had heard the finest violinist strike a false string. High treason, she said, as if tasting a brand new pastry and deciding whether to ask for more. I knew the word would be used one day. I did not think you would be the one to use it, Lord Stark. You are not clever enough. Jory moved a quiet step forward, and in the movement Ned felt his own men take a breath in unison. My lady, Jory said, you will surrender your person. Do not make us ungracious. Cersei's gaze slid past him to her children. Myrcella, she said gently, take your brother by the hand. We are going for a walk. Janis Slynt cleared his throat and found courage in the fact that he could not find any. My lady, he echoed Jory in a voice that did not belong to him. You are not going anywhere but with these men. Cersei's smile hardened the width of a nail. Do you mean to lay hands on me, Janos? My father pays you enough that you should at least pretend to bow first. Renly shifted. This is a fool's play, he murmured without looking at Ned. Either she yields and we are accused of striking a woman, or she resists and we bleed around children. We will do neither, Ned said, and the confidence in his voice surprised him. It came from elsewhere, from cold gods or old woods. My lady, you will come with us now. The children will be kept at the Red Keep in comfort and safety. If you resist, you endanger them with your obstinacy. Do not teach them that lesson. Cersei's eyes flicked to the windows, to the door behind them, to the spaces between men where she might fit if men were air. She saw what Renly had seen and then some. She looked for Littlefinger and found that he was not here to be on her side because he was never on anyone's side long enough to be found. She looked for Jaime and found only the shadows of 2 gold lions who did not have his jaw. She took a breath. I will not go, she said. Ned felt the next moment before it arrived. It entered the room like a draft through an unseen crack. Then by the king's authority, he said softly, and his throat hurt with it, I will remove you. He stepped forward, and Barristan moved with him. Slynt's men rearranged themselves in the door and took away options. Jory's hand was already at Cersei's elbow, and there the queen showed them what her nature had always been. She did not scream. She did not clutch at furniture. She stepped back like a dancer going to a new partner and set her hand on the back of a chair. You think because the king is dying and you have stolen his seal that you can unmake the world, she said, and now her voice found heat. You cannot. You can hack at branches. The root is beneath you. It will wait. It will crack the stone. It will drink your blood when it is thirsty. Take her, Ned said. There is no graceful way to lay hands on a queen. Jory tried. He was gentle and firm as winter ice and just as unyielding. Cersei allowed him to take her arm and made it look as if she had deigned to give it. She held her head as a crowned swan might hold hers, and in the set of her mouth Ned read an alphabet whose letters spelled storms. Tommen began to cry in quick, hiccuping sobs he tried to swallow because he had been taught princes did not show their throats to common feelings. Myrcella gathered him to her. The Lannister men did not draw, because their hands had already done that and had felt the cold outer circle of a dozen other hands' will. They backed away slowly and found that the wall had been moved to press on their backs. Ser Barristan, Ned said, attend upon her grace. She is to be brought to the throne room. Openly, Renly hissed. Openly, Ned said. We do not drag wolves by the tail around corners. We do not do justice in holes. Justice, Cersei repeated. Is that the word for it? I confess I had not thought to hear it in this hall without choking. Justice, Ned said again, and hoped that when the word returned to him from the stone it would not sound like a prayer unheeded. They went down through the keep in a procession that had not been arranged but made its own shape, as processions will. Word ran before them. It always did. By the time they reached the long hall, it had filled with people who could not yet believe what they had heard but intended to act as if they did. The carved beams stared down with their painted eyes and did not blink. The steps to the high seat had been swept at dawn. The stone smiled like a razor. The throne itself squatted like trapped storm clouds. Ser Meryn Trant and Ser Boros Blunt stood to either side, all blank white and flinty mouths. On whose word? Ser Meryn demanded, as if this were an argument about soup. On the king's, Ned said. He mounted the first step and felt how much it cost his leg to humor his pride. He would not sit in Robert's place, not today and perhaps not ever, but he would stand where his duty required. Bring the accused forward. Cersei came because men had made a world where women came when men compelled them. She stood before the steps with her chin tilted a finger's worth too high. At her left shoulder, Renly squinted under the weight of choices he could not yet count. Janos Slynt had found a swagger with the echo of crowds to buoy it. Varys, if he was in the hall, was a hat or a shadow or a notion. We are not in a court, Cersei said. There is no septon. There is no lord's bench. There is only a man who thinks he can put his will upon things he does not understand. We are in the presence of the law, Ned said. The law is wherever the king is and wherever his voice is heard and wherever the oath that binds us still. You have broken that oath. She did not look afraid. That was the cruelest gift she could give herself. You think you have proof, she said. You have a book. You have a friend whose blood watered the flagstones for asking too many questions. Her mouth tilted. Did you think I would cry? That I would beg? I have never begged. Ask my father. Ask my brother. I have no interest in your tears, Ned said. He wanted to be gentle and found he had no gentle left. Only the realm's peace. Then kill me, wolf, she said, like a lover whispering in a warm bed. Do it before the children look in and see. Silence moved through the hall again and found places to sit. Ned's heart went up into his throat and sat there as well. He had thought he might manage to avoid this scene, to confine his duty to chains and doors and papers. He should have known better. The law had a way of putting you in places where you could not reach for anything without closing your hand on a blade. Bring the king's justice, he said. His voice did not carry. His look did. Ser Island Payne glided forward like some lean spirit given the gift of iron. His face was a ruin. His mouth a line cut by a drunk with a dull knife. He had no tongue to speak and no need for one. Over his shoulder he wore the sword that had belonged to House Stark for longer than any man here had been alive. The Valyrian steel gleamed dully, a dark mirror that showed no man's face without stealing something from it. Ned felt a pain that had nothing to do with his leg. He had let the king's justice take ice from Winterfell's rack to do a king's work in a southern hall, and now the blade looked to him like a raven flown the wrong way in a storm. Not him, Ned said, and his voice surprised even him. It had come from the bones of him. I will do it. A stir went through the hall, a rolling sound like wheat leaning into wind. Renly looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. Janos Slynt laughed too loudly and then saw that no one else did and stopped. Ser Barristan's eyes glimmered with something that might have been respect if he had allowed himself words for it. It is not your custom here, Renly whispered. It is mine, Ned said. He held out his hand, and Ser Island gave him ice without ceremony because ceremony was not his art. The blade's weight was old rain in his arm. The old gods whispered in the curl of metal, or he imagined they did. He stepped down off the stairs and onto the flagstones, each one a step he had taken before in a snowier place. Cersei did not move. She watched him with a steadiness that would have shamed. You will not touch my children, she said, and if there was a prayer in her voice, it also had teeth. Ned lowered the blade until the point rested a moment lightly on the stone, a courteous nod before the dance. No one will harm them, he said. Not by my order. They will be kept where they cannot harm the realm. Her mouth made the shape of a laugh without the sound. Do you know what you are doing, Stark? "Do you know what seeds you plant when you spill this blood?" "Yes," he said, and the old gods and the new were both listening. "And I will water the ground with mine if that is what it takes to keep them from bearing the fruit you intend." She lifted her chin as if the crown she no longer had were still balanced there and required care. "Then see it done," she whispered. He did not remember willing his body to move. He only knew he had stepped, that he had lifted, that he had found the angle of the world that minimized suffering and bore the whole of it himself. The hall inhaled. The blade, when it fell, sang the shortest song it knew. After, there was the instant that always came, the one when sound had not yet returned and the eyes were trying to decide whether to take in what they had seen. Ned bowed his head a fraction, a gesture more for the man he had once been than for this hall of strangers. He wiped the blade with a cloth he had had the forethought to bring and not believed he would use. Ser Island received the sword back with the same innocence he had given it. Renly spoke first because he had to fill the space or drown in it. "Seize the Lannister men," he said, and his voice cracked and then steadied. "Place the children under guard. Bring them to the Maiden's Tower. No one in or out without the hand seal." The hall broke into motion, a hive whose queen had been removed. The sound returned all at once. Tommen's crying rose into a keen that had not been meant for daylight. Myrcella's face had gone as white as the Kingsguard cloak. She held her brother around the shoulders and whispered while her lower lip quivered like a bird's wing. The Lannister knights had their swords out for exactly the length of time it takes a hand to realize that it will be cut off by 3 other blades. And then the swords were on the floor and Jory was kicking them toward a corner and one of Janos's men was laughing and then swallowing his laugh because the taste of it had turned bad in his mouth. Ned stood where he was and let the whirlwind curl around him. He was not a maester to stop blood. He was not a septon to soothe. He had done what he had said and found that it had made a hole inside him that might never be filled. His leg throbbed. His hands were steady by force. He was too warm in the hall's heat, and the world smelled of iron and beeswax and faint garden herbs and the nervous sweat of men. Varys slipped to his side like a ghost creeping home. "A shape has been cut out," he murmured. "The rest of us will grow around it. That is the way of gardens. Sometimes they thrive. Sometimes they strangle." "Say what you mean," Ned said wearily. "I mean," Varys said, "that there will be letters leaving this city before the hour is old and ravens untying their own knots in the hurry to be away. I mean that Lord Tywin will not sleep until he has sharpened every knife he ever owned. I mean that the boy on the practice ground will be told his mother is dead, and that the man who told him will be the last person he ever hears anything from with trust." Ned's stomach tightened. He had intended Joffrey to be sent for and kept away and himself to be the one to tell him coldly and kindly and without flinch. The hours did not bend the way men wished. "Then bring the boy to me," he said. Renly was already dispatching men. He moved with a quick, bird-like economy that had not been there an hour ago. Ned watched him and thought of the brothers now forming a line. Robert dying, Stannis writing letters, Renly learning to move his feet like a man about to dance on a floor with knives in it. In the movement that followed, men discovered they were thirsty and doors were found for them to pass through to find drink. The hall emptied enough that the shape of what had been done could be seen even by those who had not witnessed it. A small household boy came with pails and saw the marks on the floor and went very quiet and began to scrub with a soft, quick diligence that he did not know had been taught him by years of watching older women tidy up after the feasts of great men. Sansa came in through a side door as if she had been drawn by a thread. She wore pale blue and had braided her hair with care. She had not learned yet how to keep her face from telling on her heart. When she saw Ned standing and the attention of the room turned toward some point she could not immediately name, her brow furrowed in polite puzzlement, and then her gaze shifted and found the thing in the world that could not be. It was a small mercy that she did not at once understand all that it meant. Her first thought, Ned saw it pass through her eyes, was that the queen had been taken beneath the earth by spells. Only then did she see the marks on the stone and the way the air felt around them. "Father?" she said, and her voice was the tight string on which 100 songs might be played or broken. He had thought himself empty. He found he had enough in him for this. He went to her slowly and took her by the hands. They were cold, though the hall was warm. "Sansa," he said, "I told you that kingship is not crowns and pretty courts. Today I show you that it is not a thing we watch as if it were a play." She looked past him. She looked up the hall and past the people who still drifted and out through the doors of what would be told as history in rooms where children would not be allowed. "What have you done?" she whispered. She did not say you. She said, "What have you done?" And the words were large enough for all of them. "I have done my duty," he said, because he could not soften it and remain honest. "And I have done it for you and for your sister and for those children as well, and for all the other children who have no names in rooms like this." Her mouth trembled. She was 13 and wanted to be older and wanted that yesterday and would have given anything to be younger for just a breath now, so that someone would pick her up and carry her away from this hall and put her by a fire with a cat and a cup of milk. Instead, she let go of his hands. "I loved her," she said, and the "I" was a small thing in a mouth that had wanted to say "we." "She was a queen." "She was," he said, "and a traitor." Sansa's eyes filled and did not spill. She had learned this part well. She sank into a curtsy that was too deep and too practiced and exactly wrong for the moment, then fled the way she had come. Ned wanted to call after her and to go search for Arya at the same time, knowing he would find Arya with a wooden sword somewhere trying to teach it to be steel by will. He did neither. There would be hours for it, or there would not. He could only take the next stone under his foot and make it hold. Joffrey arrived with Sandor Clegane, and they were a line drawing of war and youth beside it. The boy's hair looked dark in this light and gold in that because the day had mischief in it. His jaw set hard enough to crack a tooth. The hound walked as if he were bored and the room were a kennel, and he had brought a hard-mouthed pup to be corrected. Joffrey took in the stripped hall and the places where people had been and were not, and then he found the place where Cersei was not. "Where is my mother?" he said. He did not ask quietly. Ned had chosen a dozen speeches and discarded them before this moment. He had chosen silence and discarded it. He chose a thin truth. "She is dead." The boy went very still, and for a second Ned saw the child under the prince, the one who had played with wooden figures on the floor and wanted every one of them to be the king. Then the stillness shattered like sugar glass. "You," Joffrey breathed. "You did it." "I ordered it," Ned said. "I did it. And I did it by the king's command." "The king," Joffrey began, and the name caught. It would not be shaped in any mouth today without drawing blood. "My grandfather will." "Your grandfather is in the West," Ned said. "He will do what he does. We do what we must here." Sandor's eyes had gone distant, like a man smelling smoke on an east wind and thinking of a fire he hated. He looked to the place on the floor and back to the boy he was assigned to keep and said nothing. Joffrey's hand found the hilt at his hip and tightened, then slid off. He was not a fool. He could count men. He could count swords. "You will die for this," he told Ned, and there was no drama in it, only stubborn arithmetic. "I will have your head." "Perhaps," Ned said. "Today, however, you will be taken to your chambers. You will see your brother and sister, and you will not leave those rooms without leave. You will not speak to any man whose name is Lannister unless he is your Uncle Kevin or your grandfather, and neither is within these walls. You will not go to the yard. You will not take up a sword. You have no right," Joffrey said, and the child under him pushed once and broke through just enough to look desperate. "You cannot tell me to." "I can," Ned said. "I am hand of the king and protector of the realm until his grace's will can be read by all eyes. You will obey or you will be made to obey." The hound shrugged one shoulder and then the other, as if loosening some stiffness that had nothing to do with muscle. "Come, boy," he drawled. "Some days the kennel is safer than the yard." "I am not a dog," Joffrey snapped at him. "No," Sandor said mildly. "You're a pup." Then he looked at Ned, and the scarred side of his face was a map of an old fire and the lessons it had taught him. "He will remember this day with his teeth, Stark." Ned met the look. "So do we all." They were moving again, always moving, always bleeding some thread of the old order into the new and tying knots in it with trembling fingers. Renly called for a scribe and a septon both, as if words and blessings could add posts to a fence built in a hurry. Baratheon went to change his cloak for another white one because a spot had been made upon this one, and he was a man who had been taught to keep symbols clean even when men could not. Janos Slint counted out loud and found that he had 10 fingers and more men than that. Enough, maybe, to sell twice if a man were the sort to do such sums. Varys drifted through the heat like a veil and collected whispers. Ned climbed the steps at last and stood half a pace from the ugly throne and did not look at it. Jory brought him water. The cup was heavy. He wanted to pour it over his head and let the day run down him. He drank instead and felt nothing at first and then a small trickle of relief in his throat. Littlefinger appeared late, which was his way of pretending he was early. "I hear the most astonishing tale," he said and smiled, and the smile had less in it than usual and more. "They say a northern lord has taught the court a new dance." "I have taught nothing," Ned said. "I have done what had to be done." "That is a lesson too," Littlefinger murmured. He fluttered his fingers as if they were birds that might be encouraged to land on the right branch. "The banker in me applauds decisiveness. The boy in me, well, he imagines the mother no longer at table and how the cook will serve the next course. But perhaps that boy is unkind. He is not the kind of boy one brings to a September. Leave," Ned said, and surprised himself with the depth of contempt in the word. He had been trying, these weeks, to be a man who could use another man like a tool. Being used had a taste Petra Baelish had mistaken for sugar. "You will not be needed." "Not needed," Littlefinger repeated, and the word cut him a little. It was always strange to find that the thin plate armor of mockery had a soft skin under it. Then he laughed, lightly. "No man with your opponent's purse is ever truly unneeded, Lord Stark. But I will take your kindness in the spirit offered and go somewhere else to make mischief." He bowed and slid away, trailing a scent of wintergreen and coins. The hours made themselves into a ladder. Ned climbed it one rung at a time. He signed orders. He heard from the kennelmaster who claimed the boar's head had spoiled and from the steward who wanted to know if the queen's household accounts were to be frozen. And if so, which accounts counted as the queen's and which as the realm's, and from the stablemaster who wanted to know what horse should be sent for the procession to the September. Ned thought, for the first time in some days, of Winterfell, of men who knew to send a boy to sweep a kitchen as soon as a pie was done because that was how work was. He thought of men who did not send a boy because a pie was someone else's task. The South made him tired in a way that no day on the King's Road ever had. He found himself alone at last in the antechamber behind the hall with the sounds of an unsettled court muffled by the thick door. He set his hands on the table and bowed his head over them and spoke the simplest prayer he knew, which did not include god names or requests, only the truth. I will do right, and where I fail, let my failure be mine. When he lifted his head again, Arya was in the doorway, dirty-faced and bright-eyed, and Syrio Farrell lurked behind her like a man whose profession made him invisible even when he was being watched. You did it, Arya said, awe and something like wind in her voice. Sansa is crying like a house with a broken roof. I know, Ned said. Come here, little one. She came, though she was not little in the way she had been. He studied her face and saw the Stark in it and the other iron lines that came from a woman not his and from a life she meant to live by her own choosing. You cannot wave your stick at this, he said. Today you must learn another lesson. What lesson? She asked. She wanted it as men want to lift the heavier weight. That when a man does his duty, it may break a heart and still be right. He brushed at a smear of dust on her cheek, which was his way of not holding her too tight. And that right does not always feel like a song. She considered that and frowned. But it feels better than wrong? It feels clearer, he said. Sometimes that is all men are given. Syrio cleared his throat. The girl will be safe with me, he said in his soft accent. I will teach her to keep her eyes open. Today is a good day for that. Teach her to keep her sword down, Ned said. I can show her the position, Syrio said gravely. I cannot hold her wrist when she lifts it. Do your best, Ned muttered, and the water in his eyes was from the day's heat and nothing else. There was no more time. There would never be more time. Renly had returned, face pale and shining with sweat. to say that the king had woken and cursed and laughed and begged for wine and refused it and now had fallen quiet again. The septon had come with his oils. The bells had not begun yet. They waited like larks in the eaves for some signal no man could predict. Ned took up the protector's seal and looped its chain over his head and felt the foolish weight of it on his chest. He walked back into the hall. The people there turned to him, and the turning felt like wind against the hide of a horse. He thought of a yard in the north and men who repaired a gate not because they loved gates but because winter would come sooner or later and you could lose your fingers trying to tie a latch with a storm on you. He thought, too, of a woman with hair like pale ale and a voice that had learned not to tremble, and how she had gone to the only place in the world where men would not judge her by how carefully she sat. He thought of the children, Joffrey scarce taller than his pride, Myrcella with her gentleness honed by silk, Tommen's grief knocking at his chest like a small bird. He raised his hand for silence that he did not expect to receive and was surprised when it came. "Here," he said, "by the king's command, Cersei of House Lannister has been executed for treason against the crown. The king's children will be kept safe until the king may speak their future." The words were stones on a cart. He moved them into place. Eyes, dozens of pairs, lifted to the throne. Restless as elkin rut, men sensed a hole in their world the way animals feel tremors. Robert had lived his life as if it were a feast spread for him, and if the table had legs or not did not concern him as long as it held. Now the table shook. Now the dishes slid. "Where is Stannis?" someone called, a voice with iron in it. "In the city," Ned said. "He sent a letter. We will hear him." "Where is the queen?" another called, and then a woman's voice cried and the words were lost in a sob. Laughter rose and was smothered. The human herd shifted, hooves on stone. "Go to your work," Ned said. "The realm does not run on talk." It was the wrong thing to say. It was the only thing to say. He ignored the looks that said he was lying or stupid or both. He had no interest in making furniture out of the air. He would nail together what he could reach. As the hall slowly drained again, one of Janos Slint's men brought a crumpled scrap of parchment to him, a raven's note with the ink still bitten into the fibers. Ned took it without looking at the seal. He read the words twice and then a third time. Stannis Baratheon would not come to court until it was made safe for justice to be spoken. He had men on his island and more on the way, and his terms were plain and unpleasant. Purge the court of Lannister serpents, disarm the gold cloaks, hold Joffrey in irons until a council could be convened of those not compromised by lust or fear. There were other words about bastardy and law and precedent that made sense and no sense, piled high like firewood in the wrong season. Always with him, Renly breathed at his shoulder. "It is a list. What will you do?" Varys asked, so gently that for a moment Ned believed the man meant him well. "What I said I would," Ned answered. "I will keep the realm's peace." He went then to the window at the far end of the hall, where the light limped in through the colored glass and laid patchwork on the floor. He stood in it and closed his eyes and saw again the sword's arc. He did not pretend that the feeling in his chest was satisfaction, and he did not pretend it was regret. It was something older than both, as old as the stone and the sea and men standing between them so the roofs would not blow off. Far out in the city, a bell tolled once, and as the sound rolled in like a long low wave he knew before the second struck that the king had died or would die before the third. The tone passed through the hall and into the keep and down into the bones of the hill that held it, and it was like a hand pressed flat to an open wound. The second stroke came. Men looked at each other as if they did not recognize the animal they had married when they took their oaths. The third came and Ned closed his eyes. He would go to the king. He would hear the last breath leave him or find that it had already gone. He would take up a pen then and write the words that would make Renly snarl and Stannis nod and Tywin Lannister's jaw flex and Varys sigh and Littlefinger giggle like a boy shown a knife. He would place boys and girls in rooms where they would be safe or think themselves caged. He would ride a horse at the head of men and be cursed for not choosing a faster one. He would send ravens. He would receive them. He would ask the old gods for something they had never given any man. A clean choice. He opened his eyes and found that he was already moving. Steps turned toward the king's chambers, Renly falling in, Barristan ahead like a ghost made of duty, Varys to the side where a man might reach if he stumbled. The hall spilled them out into corridors where the air was thicker and the torches had already been lit because servants had not waited for dusk. A boy ran past them with a stack of linens clutched to his chest as if he were saving a child from a burning house. Somewhere a woman sang a lullaby to a babe whose ears were too young to make sense of bells. When Ned reached the threshold, he paused. The room was full. Rooms were always full when a king died, full of the living who want a piece of the moment as if it were meat. Robert lay on the bed and looked smaller than he had that morning, simpler, like the idea of a man cut out of paper. The wound smelled the way wounds smell. The Septon stood with his oils and had stopped singing because there was no longer a mouth for his words to climb through. Renly made a sound under his breath like a man who has seen an axle crack in the middle of a long road. Ned went to the bedside. He stood a moment and then bowed his head. The anger and the love he had held for this man lay together at last and did not quarrel. He set his hand on the linen at Robert's arm, not touching skin. "Go gently, old friend," he said. The bells went on. The keep breathed differently. Outside, the day had found its full heat. Somewhere beyond the walls of the city, a raven felt a sudden craving to stretch its wings. In the yard below, Sandor Clegane led a stubborn boy by the elbow. In a high room, a girl wiped her eyes on the back of her hand and told herself a story in which she had never had to learn anything the hard way. In a solar that smelled of oranges and wax and something sweeter that had escaped, a cat jumped off a lap that would never warm again and stalked to a bowl and ate without understanding. Ned turned away from the bed. The dead had left him their work to do. He took up every piece of it that he could carry in that first hour because there was no other hour in which to begin. And when he stepped back into the corridor, the stones under his boots took his weight not unwillingly, as if they, too, approved of a man who put one foot down after the other and did not wait for the world to become kinder before he carried on. The bells went on ringing as if the city itself were a bell and all of it were swung in a slow arc by a giant hand. Their iron voices rolled across the roofs and back again, stacking upon themselves. Men made signs against unlucky sound and then forgot and made them again. The Septon poured his oil in a thin gleam that caught the candlelight like water poured into a ditch. When the last of the breath left the king's chest, it did not stir the flame. It was too tired for such a trick. Renly stood with his head bowed, lips white where his teeth pressed them. Ser Barristan knelt a moment, one knee on the rushes. The old knight had learned dignity as a man learns to mend a shirt, by doing it over and over until even the stitches no one would ever see were straight. Pycelle wept with soft noises that belonged to another room and another day. Varys folded his hands and said nothing. Ned stood because kneeling would have cost more time from his leg than there was to gain. He watched the skin go slack in Robert's face. Some boyhood mischief, some wine-soaked boast that had clung in the lines around his mouth, let go. The man who had been his friend lay quiet at last, and in that quiet Ned heard, as clearly as if it had been spoken in the language of the hills, the work that falls to the living, wood to chop, cords to bind, doors to bar against the dark. "Gods take him to kinder fields," Renly whispered, and the prayer sounded like a boy asking forgiveness for stealing a berry tart. "Send for his brothers," Ned said. "Send for the High Septon. We must set the rites in order." Pycelle sniffed himself a nod. "There are forms," he began, and the lists tumbled from him like old coins. Washing, salting, incense, vigil, prayers, shrouding, lying in state beneath the dome of Baelor. "The people will need to pass near him. They always do. It soothes them. Then we will be soothed," Ned said, and for an instant the corner of Renly's mouth twitched, as if he had recognized a northern joke that had traveled too far. Ser Barristan rose. "His Grace spoke last. He named you protector," he said, and it was not a question. "He did," Ned answered. His hand was on the table already, feeling for the weight of the parchment. Barristan lifted it to him, careful of the seal as if it were the heart of an egg. Ned took it and did not look down. The words were already carved behind his ribs. "Then we must gather," Varys murmured. "The small council should have its say, the forms observed, the seals impressed. There are witnesses who have not seen and others who have seen too much. We will meet within the hour, Ned said. Renly, send for them. Ser Barristan, you and Ser Meryn and Ser Boros will hold the doors to the throne room. No one in or out without my word. White, Barristan said, touching his own cloak in assent, and was gone like a man walking back into a duty he had been wearing since he had been a boy. Renly's green flickered from face to face. My uncle Stannis, he said. He is not here. No, Ned said, but he will be king if the law is king. The words lay between them like a plank set over a ditch. Renly's mouth thinned. He will be king if we allow him to be, he said, and then, catching Ned's look, inclined his head. As you say, for now. He turned and began to issue orders as smoothly as a man dealing cards. Varys waited until the others had swallowed enough tasks to be away. A kindness and a cruelty remain, he said softly. Speak plainly, Ned told him. The boy, the eunuch said. He must be told of his mother and his king. You should do it if you mean to keep him tamed. He is full of bites and scratches where no hand has touched him lately. The hound keeps him from breaking his teeth on stone. But even the best of hounds cannot teach a wolf cub to be a lamb. Ned rubbed the ache in his brow with the heel of his hand. Send for him, he said, and bring Tommen and Myrcella after. They should not hear ill news from corridor whispers. Varys's eyes were damp. Whether from tenderness or trade one could not say. As you will. He did not have long to stand alone with the dead man and the smell of oil and herbs. The bells counted out the spaces between breaths as if in mockery. Ned felt each toll as a small press of iron at the base of his skull and thought of Winterfell's quieter ways. A single bell for harvest, another for floods. A horn for wolves, another for riders on the road. King's Landing liked to divide the day into slivers and count each one. Then toss the pieces in the mud and stomp them flat for the pleasure of the stomp. You learned the city's games or the city learned you. When Joffrey came, his face had the burnished brightness of someone who had been crying and now would rather be hanged than be caught at it. Sandor Clegane loomed behind, half-masked by his own history. 2 gold cloaks trailed, grim with the knowledge that nothing in their experience had prepared them to stand near so much that mattered. Ned gestured to a stool and the boy did not sit. He folded his arms and pretended it was different. Your Grace. Ned began and saw the boy's chin jerk on its hinge. Old habit met new fact and balked at the gate. Joffrey, he corrected. Your mother is dead. The king as well. I am sorry. Joffrey did not move. His eyes darted to the bed and leapt away. You will choke on that word, he said tonelessly. Sorry, he meant. There are children for whom apology is an insult worse than a blow. My grandfather will hang you. Perhaps, Ned said. Today we do what must be done, and tomorrow we are judged. You will be taken to your rooms. You will remain there. Your brother and sister will be kept with you. You will treat them kindly. You will speak when spoken to. Something under the boy bristled. You think because you killed her you can order me like a dog? I cannot order you like a dog, Ned said. Dogs obey. They learn. He wished at once he had not said it, but there are words that come as quick as a parry. Once in the air they cannot be recalled. Joffrey's breath snared. The muscles in his jaw worked. For half a heartbeat he looked very young, too young even to be cruel yet. And then the hinge in him snapped and the brittleness returned. He turned his head. Sandor, he said. The hound's gaze slid to Ned and back to the boy. Best save your teeth, he told Joffrey mildly. Chew too hard on iron and you'll crack them. Joffrey flung away with a motion that turned his hair to fly, the too bright gold catching and losing the light in the span of a step. The hound followed. Ned watched them go and thought, not for the first time, that there were wounds a sword could not make and a salve could not touch. Myrcella and Tommen came together, hand in hand, the girl's chin jutting in a child's imitation of poise, the boy's cheeks still wet. Tommen's sobs were hiccuping ghosts. He fought them and lost in small measures, his lip trembling and setting like a boat on a rough pond. Myrcella curtsied and whispered, Lord Stark, very carefully, as if pronouncing a charm against evil. "You have lost your mother," Ned said gently. "I am sorry." Tommen's face crumpled in relief at hearing the word from a mouth that did not wield it as a blade. He began to cry properly, not the stifled little noises of a prince, but the deep, gulping floods of a boy to whom the world has shown its first true tooth. Myrcella put her arm around him and made little circles on his shoulder with her hand in a way that told Ned Cersei had, for all the ways she was a lioness who bit, also been a mother who stroked. "You will be safe," he said. "You will have your own rooms and your own maids and your cat. No one will harm you, on my honor." Myrcella's eyes, mossy green with her mother's cunning erased by shock, moved up to meet his. "People will hate us," she said, and it was not a complaint. It was the recital of a lesson learnt young. The love of the people for princes runs in rills, the hatred in springs. "Some will," Ned said, "but you are children. The worst of men have some mercy for that. And the better sort I will find and keep near you. Can I see her?" Tommen snuffled. "Not now," Ned said. "Later in the sept, when she is at peace, there will be prayers. We will speak to the gods for your father and for her." He could not say for your mother. The word felt in his mouth, like a lie with a soft pelt and long claws. He sent them away to their tower with 2 of his own men, whom he trusted to breathe only when told. He stood a moment longer in the warm, heavy air and then went to make the hour do what he wanted of it. The small council gathered with the smell of candles and old paper and too much caution. Varys drifted in like a bit of silk. Pycelle took a seat and arranged his chains as a woman might arrange a shawl. Littlefinger arrived last, smiling as if he had juggled 3 apples and only dropped one. Renly took his place, green velvet like a meadow rolled out, and sat too straight in his chair. Ser Barristan stood by the door and made the space less corrupt by simply being in it. Ned set Robert's letter on the table and broke the silence by opening it. He did not have it read by a clerk. He read it himself, the words plain and weighty, naming him protector and regent until the rightful heir took the throne. He did not flinch from the rightful. He did not name the boy who had been raised to think he was the heir. Pycelle coughed himself into a sentence. "In good faith," he said, "we must consider the realm's temper. The people loved the queen. They will be unsettled by the manner of—" He seemed to look for a phrase soft as velvet and firm as chain. "Of events. The manner was justice," Ned said, "and swifter than I would have liked. It was also necessary. You are welcome to argue with necessity, Grand Maester. I have never been able to make it hear me." Varys's hands made a little fluttering that might have been approval or caution or both. "We must speak of succession," he said. "There is a name unspoken among us, and one that some of us would prefer not to hear." Renly leaned forward. "If we are to speak of names," he said coolly, "let us speak of the one that will keep swords in their sheaths, mine." Littlefinger's brows tilted, the picture of a man delighted by the arrival of the very mischief he had been hoping to see. "At last," he breathed, as if a friend had made a witty remark he had himself whispered to him minutes before. Pycelle made a noise like a horse startled by a door banging. "Your Grace, my lord, Lord Renly, you are bold." "The realm needs a king," Renly said. "It will have one. Stannis is the elder, and what has that given him? No friends, no smiles, no sons, a wife who looks like a dried apple, and a seat on a rock in the sea with a red priestess to hiss in his ear. He will be obeyed by men who think ink is blood. The rest will turn their faces to the west or the south. I can bring them to heel without breaking their bones." His gaze cut to Ned. "You have seen what Stannis is. Is this the man who will soothe sirs and small folk alike? He will cut the meat so thin there will be none to chew, and then he will beat the table for not being full." "Law is not a feast," Ned said. "It is a fence. And who will mend it?" Renly snapped. "Stannis will stand on it and break it with his own heels. Then he will make a better one that no man can pass or level or even look over. And the realm," he spread his hands, "the realm will be a paddock." Ned felt the ache behind his eyes grow. He had no patience for clever metaphors when the day had already found its fill of blood. "Lord Stannis is the rightful heir," he said. "I have written to him. He will come to take what is his." Littlefinger's smile widened. "I do so love men who believe letters can cross the black dog's back without a bite," he murmured. Pycelle slapped a hand upon the table, making his chains chime. "If King Robert named you protector, Lord Stark, then the matter of the boy of Joff of the prince." His words tangled. Ned did not help. "The prince," Pycelle continued, "must be declared illegitimate in a court of law with septon and lord and an empty chair where his mother might sit," Varys said softly, and all their eyes went to him for a heartbeat because he had the salt to say the thing that had been avoided. "I am no lawyer, gods forbid, but I can hear where a tune will go sour. The faith will make a fuss. The high septon will be offended by the swiftness of your justice." He would have preferred the old music. Prayers, confessions, penances, stripping in a September, perhaps a shaving of hair and a long walk to the mother house. The Queen deprived him of a chance to sermonize. "The Queen deprived herself of the chance to live," Ned said. "We will not retry her on a table of talk. She is beyond us now." Renly stared at the parchment as if it might have grown hands and begun to strangle him. "If we keep the boy under lock and announce Stannis as king," he said, "the city will not rise. It will grumble. That is a kind of quiet. But the lords, Mace Tyrell will not love Stannis. He loves little but the sight of himself in a looking pool. He will follow power. If I am king, he will send me roses and knights. If Stannis is king, he will water his hedges and wait to see if Lannister burns. The West, Tywin will rage," Littlefinger said happily. "He will write letters to the faith and they will write back in thick script and red wax. He will send coin to men who have taken money from far less generous purses. He will send swords to men who find cause wherever their bellies bite. He will teach us all the value of a heavy purse." "He has already sent swords," Ned said. "The riverlands burn. I have my own ravens to that effect from Lord Tully. I will send the hand's word to cease and return. If he defies it, we will have cause that even septons can read." "You will need more than letters to restrain a lion," Varys said. "You will need a whip." "We have children," Littlefinger noted. 3 small whips, in point of fact. He glanced around as if expecting some applause for the neatness. Ned's hands had gone to fists before he was aware of it. He forced them to open. "They are not whips," he said. "They are children. And what is a hostage but a word softer for a whip?" Littlefinger murmured, and then opened his hands innocently. "You need not strike them, my lord hand. You need only let their father and uncles see the handle in your palm." "You have had your say," Ned told him. "It was longer than I liked. We will do this by the law. Stannis will be summoned to take the crown. Until then, I am protector and I will protect. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen will be kept as befits noble children. If their kin raise banners against the realm, we will answer with men and not with knives to throats." Littlefinger leaned back and made a face, as if he had bitten into an unripe peach. "You persist in making this difficult," he said pleasantly. "But I confess I would be disappointed if you did not. It would be like discovering a favorite song sung too quickly." Pycelle puffed up with relief at a path marked out. "We must inform the faith, and the city, and the houses." He looked to Varys. "The ravens," Varys smiled, "already shaking their feathers, Grand Maester. They do so love a good gossip." Renly tilted his chair back and let it come down again. "When you put Stannis on that chair," he said to Ned, "you make war upon me as well." "I make peace with myself," Ned said. "You can call the rest what you please." The meeting dissolved into errands and murmurs and looks. Ned found himself walking once more, because men in a keep are always walking somewhere. He went to his solar to scratch lines of ink until the page's whiteness had been tamed. Orders to the city watch to change their posts, to close the river gate at dusk, to double the guard at the royal nursery, to drag the refuse away from the fish market because men riot more readily when they wade in filth. He sent for Janos Slint and spoke to him until he had wrung some clarity from the man's bluster. "The watch keeps the peace," Slint repeated, enormous in his chair, like a loaf risen too far. "We keep our noses where they belong. Those are my words." "Good," Ned said. "Keep them clean. If a Lannister sword in a red cloak appears in the streets, it is not to draw. If it draws, you will have the man and the sword both. If you cannot take both, take the man." Slint nodded, eyes small. "And the gold, my lord?" Ned hadn't mentioned gold. The word landed between them like a beached carp. "The watch is paid," he said. "On time, in full. I will see to it myself." Slint smiled with his tongue, and Ned thought it a curious way to be a man. Outside, the day moved. Servants bore buckets, and the buckets sloshed. Women lit lamps and then snuffed them because they had misjudged the light. Men slapped each other's arms for news that grew wild between hand and ear. The September's great doors opened and closed and opened again. The heat crawled in under the skin and flattened men's will like bread dough. Somewhere in the stables a horse screamed once, long and thin, and then stopped. Ned ate what his stomach would take. The heel of a loaf, a sliver of hard cheese, a pair of cherries shriveled to their pits by a cook who had decided to be thrifty today and kind tomorrow. He drank watered wine and thought of snow melt, a taste that had been his standard for clean his whole life. He wanted the sound of crows in a naked tree. He wanted the chatter of Maester Luwin and the impatience of Robb's feet and the way the wind at Winterfell got into your bones and taught you their names. He sent for Sansa. When she came, her eyes were reddened and the skin around them swollen, her chin trembling from the effort of lifting it. She had dressed again. Girls who want to be women do so after every upset, as if another gown were a spell against grief, and the pale blue suited her badly in this light. She sat when he gestured, without grace today, her legs too long for the chair and her ankles turning in. She was still so young. "I am sorry for it," he said before she could accuse him. "I am sorry you had to see any of it." "You killed her," Sansa said. The words were small, as if she had asked why the soup was cold. "She was my queen. I loved her. She was kind to me. She was sometimes kind," Ned said. "That is a different thing than being good." The girl's breath hitched. "You are cruel," she whispered, and the cruelty in him owned the word. It bowed its head to it. "You send Joffrey away and lock him in a tower like a villain out of an old tale. You make everyone hate him. You have taken everything from me." She leaned forward, sudden as a bird hop, and seized his hand. Let me see him and tell him that I do not blame him. He will be king one day." "He will not," Ned said, and the line he walked was a blade. "He will not be king, Sansa." She blinked as if water had been flung upon her. "He is the king's son." No, he waited for the words to catch up with her ear. They did, and she recoiled as if stung. "You lie," she said. She said it like a prayer. "You lie to hurt me. I would not lie to you. You lied to me the day you told me we would come to a shining city where everyone was noble and everything was splendid, and I would wear gowns like the ladies in songs." She spat. "You lied when you told me that goodness mattered." He almost smiled, not for the wit but for the iron. "I told you those things would be tested. This is the test." She looked at him a long moment as if he were a column she had leaned upon without thinking and now found was made of wet clay. Then she stood. "I hate you," she said very softly, so that the words stood a chance of being untrue later. She walked out as if she were moving down a long hall to a dais where a prince waited, and behind her he saw the small girl who still gripped her skirts in two hands when she faced a strange dog in a yard. After she had gone, Arya was there as if she had sprung fully armed from beneath a chair. "She is silly," she declared. "Joffrey is a toad." "Do not name your sister foolish," Ned said. "Her heart is bleeding. Yours would too if you'd let it." "It bleeds for better things," Arya said. Her chin came up like a little sword. "Yoren is here." "Yoren," Ned said, and the relief was almost painful. "Where?" "Below, under the Tower of the Hand," she said. "He says he is gathering em from the cells." She mimed a straggling procession with her fingers, a long, thin world that began in the black cells and went north to the wall. He smells like old leather and onions. He always did, Ned said and stood. Come, then. They found Yoren in a draft that was cooler than any other place in the keep that day, a mercy for which even Southerners would have thanked the dark. He had the look of a man whose bones had been left too long in the weather. Whatever flesh lay over them had made its own peace. He scratched at his stubble and spat. "Lord Stark," he said, as if he had found Ned in a ditch on a rainy road at night and been surprised neither by the dark nor the man in it. "Word runs fast. I hear it in the rats' feet. And in the ravens," Ned said. "I have a request of you, Yoren." "I ain't a lord to be requested of," Yoren said. "I'm a crow. Crows take what they like." "Take my daughters north," Ned said. The words had been forming since the bells. They emerged with relief and dread braided together. "Take them out with your ragged men and your whores and your boys who have brought their knives and no shirts. Dull their hair. Smudge their faces. No one will look directly at them if you do it right. Even the gods avoid your kind when you march." Yoren scratched his jaw. "They'll bitch," he said. "Girls do. And they'll draw eyes, pretty as they are, unless I spoil it." "S'pose you mean me to spoil it?" "I do," Ned said. "At first light. Perhaps before." "Your protector," Yoren said, "feels a mite like a king to me. Why you send him off like a man who knows the house will burn?" "Because the house may," Ned said, "and because the path north grows less sure with every hour. I would have them cross it while it is still a road and not a ditch." Yoren nodded, as if complimenting a man's choice of boots. I seen a ditch pretend to be a road before. Be worse'n a lie. Right then. Bring 'em to the carts afore cockcrow. I'll do the littlest first." "Both," Ned said. Yoren squinted. "The little one will go. The other." He hawked and spat again, delicately, as if painting a shape with spit. "She'll scratch, and she'll think she's lovin' you by scratchin' hard." "I know," Ned said. "Still." Yoren shrugged with a wings economy. "As you like." He looked at Arya and smiled with the corner of his mouth that had not been taught to fear a knife. "You'll itch for your stick, girl. I'll let you keep it if you never show it without me sayin'. You hear? There's nasty lads in the shadows who'll take stick and hand both off you." "I hear," Arya said solemnly. "Don't look like you hear," Yoren grunted. "You look like you're thinkin' of slammin' it in my teeth. Don't. I got few enough of him." Arya showed her tongue. Yoren ignored it the way a man ignores a sparrow pecking the hitching post when the horse is the one might kick him. Ned sent Arya to fetch a bundled cloak and bread, and when she had gone, the rough man leaned in. "There's other news," he said. "The wall is hungry. Ravens bring more emptiness than letters. Old Bear will squeeze his cup in his hand so tight he'll break it afore he asks a lord for coin. But I ain't the Old Bear. There's a boy in the cells, highborn by the stink on him and by the curses he flings at his own name. He goes north with me or he goes nowhere but a grave. I could leave him, but he has a way of looking at a door as if it could become a road for him. That sort makes trouble afore breakfast." "Tyrion Lannister," Ned said. The name fitted the shape easily. "I knew he had been held. I did not expect him to be here." Yoren snorted. "I, Lord Stark. He was here for a time when I fetched another pair for the road. He ain't here now. He ain't in the city neither. Word is he fell upward out of the vale with a cell's word at his elbow and a coin in his boot. He'll find his father's tent by the smell of boiled leather."
Ned exhaled.
"Then the west will tighten, and the vale will pretend it never had him as a guest. They do love their mountains," Yoren said. "Keeps their eyes pointed up where they don't have to see a man looking back at him." He hitched his belt. "I'll be ready at first light. Be ready, BF. Or," Ned said, "I will send them before dawn. If one comes and not the other, take that one and go." Yoren scratched where his hair met his skull. He said simply, and vanished into stone and shadow the way men like him know how. The day shortened and lengthened both. It had a way of being 2 days at once. the courts where everything was parchment and posture, and the cities where everything was heat and hunger. Ned stood in both, feet wide to keep his balance. He spoke to Ser Barristan again, and to the captains of the gates, to the armorer charged with the Dromans at anchor on the Blackwater, to the steward who shook as if he were a sack of millet and kept spilling figures Ned did not need. He sent for the High Septon and received instead a junior of the cloth with hands soft as dough and words stiff as wood. The man was offended. The man was full of the faith's old rights. The man wanted a queen to lie in the sept and be wept over by a city that had not yet decided whether it missed her. Ned told him the city would be permitted its tears. The junior septon sniffed out a blessing and left. Renly came to him in the late light, when the slashes of sun in the windows turned to gold washed thin. He had taken off his sword and set it under his arm like a roll of vellum, which told Ned he did not know yet which he would need more. "I cannot be part of this," Renly said without an opening courtesy. "I cannot stand beside you while you hand my brother's city to Stannis as if it were a platter. He will break it against his knee out of spite." "The law does not bend to spares," Ned said. "It receives the next in line." "Then you receive the next in fighting," Renly retorted. "There is an easier way. If you will stand with me, if you will put the watch in my hand and send ravens to the reach, gods, Ned, we could have 100,000 spears in a season. Mace Tyrell will send them for me. He will not send them for Stannis, not unless he is convinced he can master him later, and Stannis will not be mastered. Make me king. Do not shake your head. Listen, you have killed the woman who made the boy a tyrant. You have the boy caged. You can say to the city, peace and bread, and a smiling king who will not carve you to the bone for the sake of a law the small folk do not read. Let me be what the people need. We will feed them and clap them on the shoulders and show them a hand without rings when they hold out their own. Stannis will make them bow until their backs break. You are your brother's brother, Ned said, because the taste of it was in his mouth. You would be a king for feasts and hunts. Stannis will be a king for winters. The realm needs winters endured more than it needs harvests celebrated. Renly flinched as if struck. Then he smiled, sharp and quick. Which realm? Yours? There are more men south of the neck who will put my name in their mouths gladly than will cough out Stannis's. Make the choice that keeps boys from being piled like cordwood. The choice is made already, Ned said. I did not make it. The line of descent made it. If we unmake it now, we tell men that law is a tool we sharpen when we like and toss away when it cuts us. The next man who sits that chair will set it alight when he cannot rise by sitting quietly. Renly stared at him for a long time and then shook his head slightly, in disbelief or pity or both. You are stone, he said. Even fire cannot teach stone to dance. He hesitated, and some kindness, perhaps half-grown and cautious, peered out from under his fine clothes. Take care, Ned. When you choose Stannis, you choose a war with me. I choose to keep my word, Ned said. Renly's eyes went to the window where the light was failing into a bruise. Then I will keep mine, he said. He bowed, little enough to be called courtesy, and was gone. Varys arrived before dusk with a candle cupped in his hand, though there was no need yet. We will have a different city by morning, he said. Lord Renly has been seen in the stables. He has been seen in 3 different cloaks. He has been seen in none at all by a boy who will tell the tale for pennies for years. Ser Loras's horse is gone from its stall. You could have stopped him, Ned said, and heard in his own voice the weary accusation of a man who knows the river will flood and asks a weathervane why it did not shout. I could have made his leaving uglier, Varys said. Better he slip through the gate at night with 50 or 100 than he rage at noon with 1,000 in his train. Lord Renly's pride is thick. It will carry many to ruin. We might as well watch it do so at a distance. Ned thought of Stannis, far out upon his rock, counting masts. He thought of the reach, fat and green and gentry dotted, a place where war is a pageant until the first field burns. He thought of roads, were like a road. It walked faster there. We must harden the city, he said. Close the gates to companies of more than 20 men. Put a chain across the rush where it narrows. Send food upriver if we can buy it. We will have mouths to feed at the September. If we starve the mourners, they will riot inside the dome and call it justice." "Done," Varys said, and he almost certainly meant it. The man had a way of making things be done while other men were still thinking how to order them. "And prisoners. None who can pay for their supper," Ned said. "We will have no new debts if we can help it." The hour before full dark was given to the king's washing. Silent sisters worked with the quiet competence of women who had been invisible all their lives and learned to bend grace to drudgery. They unwrapped the wound. The smell went up like a prayer no one would claim. They cleaned the broken flesh and wrapped it again and inked the old dyes on Robert's cheeks to keep corruption from showing its first bold specks. The High Septons Jr. returned with oils and a drier offense. Pycelle quoted a passage about kings having two bodies that meant something in a scholar's room and nothing in this hot one. Barristan stood very straight until he did not. It was full dark by the time Ned crossed the yard to the Maiden's Tower. Torches sizzled in brackets like meat on a spit. The night smelled of their fat and of the sea. He had armed men at the base and armed men on the stair. He had his own name like a password. Still, when he reached the door to the royal children's rooms, Sandor Clegane uncoiled from a bench and filled the space so suddenly that the doorway seemed to grow smaller. "They've had their milk and their tears," the hound said. "The boy sleeps like someone beat him with sticks. The girl sleeps as if she'll be called to a dance. The prince does not sleep. He watches the window as if it owed him something. He told me he'll cut your heart out when he is king. I told him you'd keep it under your shirt." He did not laugh. "Good," Ned said. "He should be learning which jokes are unwise. I would not put steel in his hand until he knows," Sandor said, and the scar at his mouth twitched. "I suppose that is your wish too." "It is. Shall I go in with you, or will it be sweeter if he gets to speak unguarded?" "Stay," Ned said. "He will speak more freely if you are there. He thinks you understand him." "He is a boy who loves pain," the hound said. "We understand each other very well." Joffrey sat on a chair with his feet tucked up on the rungs like a lad of 8. His hands were white-knuckled on the arms. He looked at Ned when he entered. It was not the look of a boy for a man. It was the look of a hawk for a rabbit it cannot reach because the hood is still on. "You've done all you can do today," Joffrey said. "Tomorrow I will do what I can." "You will remain in your room," Ned said. "You will let your sister and brother sleep. You will leave off your shouting. That is what you will do tomorrow, and the next day as well." "I will make you beg when the day comes," Joffrey said. "I will hang you from the walls and have the cooks roast pieces of you and serve them to your men." "Roasted man is tough," the hound observed. "You'd do better to boil him." Joffrey didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth twitched as a boy's will at the idea of a prank not yet performed. He fought it down. He glared instead until his eyes shone like wet slate. "Sleep," Ned said. "You will do worse things if you do not." "I will do worse things because I want to," Joffrey said. "Get out." Ned left him with Sandor and closed the door on both boys, one grown too tall to have ever been a child and the other refusing to admit he still was one. He stood a moment in the stairs turning and let the stone cool him. He thought of Yoren and the carts and the black-cloaked line that would snake out of the city before dawn. He thought of Sansa in her blue and Arya with a smear of dust, an extra smudge from her thumb to make it real. Before dawn, he walked with them. The sky over the river had a gray seam, and the gulls had begun their noisy accounts. Yoren waited under the wall, a knot of men around him whose smell would go with them to the snows and make them welcome nowhere but there. Arya had tied her hair tight in a single crude tail that made a whip of it. Sansa wore a plain brown cloak she hated. It showed in every fold. Her maid stood behind, thin-lipped and swallowed by the morning. "You will go with Yoren," Ned said. "You will not speak your names. You will not be Sansa and Arya Stark until you stand under Winterfell's gate. Men will turn you in for a penny in this city and for a nod elsewhere. Yoren will keep you. If he tells you to jump in a ditch, do it. If he tells you to eat a crust he has trod on, you will eat it." Sansa flinched. "This is like a punishment in a story," she whispered. The princess is sent to work in a kitchen because she has offended a witch. It is like a safeguard, Ned said, because the witches are men and carry swords and take coin. Arya rolled her eyes at Sansa until it seemed they might never be straight again. I will be good, she promised, eyes bright. I will be silent as Yoren wants and quick as Syrio taught. Sansa's eyes flicked, in their last hope, to the keep behind him. What about Joffrey? She burst. You told me he would not be king, but perhaps you are wrong, as you have been wrong about other things. And if I go away, he will think I am a coward and... She bit her lip and regathered herself as a woman wipes a spill and lays a fresh cloth. I will stay. I will be good, and I will speak to him when it is time, and he will understand that none of this was my doing. He will be angry, but he is good at heart. I saw him feed a puppy once. You saw a boy feed a puppy because a girl was looking at him, Ned said without cruelty. Sansa, look at me. She did because the habit of that was old as breath. I am keeping you from harm. Do not make it harder. She looked as if she would spit back and then swallow the words. When she opened her mouth, all that came out was a ragged breath. She nodded, suddenly small again in the brown cloak. Yes, father. He kissed her brow. He kissed Arya's as well, and the dirt tasted like salt on his mouth because tears and dust are cousins. He put a hand on Yoren's shoulder and squeezed until the sinew beneath his palm made complaint. Keep them, he said. They'll be kept, Yoren replied. I'll put the little one next the cart with the knives. Be less likely to go rummaging for other ones. Arya's mouth made an O of delight before she could help herself. Sansa gave her a look that might have sharpened a knife if it had had a blade. The carts began to creak. The wall's ragged heraldry moved forward, and with it 2 girls in uglier cloaks than they had ever thought to wear. Ned stood to see them pass the gate and vanish like drops of river water lost among reeds. He breathed until the breath hurt and then went back to a keep already changed by their absence, by the absence of every woman who had ever lent it a laugh. The day that followed was a day of mourning and of law. The hand that clanged the bell at the sept must have blistered. They unrolled carpets so thick that barefoot men could have walked over hot coals upon them and taken no harm, and still the sound of the people came up through them, wailing and the low hum of words to gods and the sniffle of children who did not understand why the cakes were sweet and the faces wet. Ned endured the procession by Robert's bier. He bowed to the high septon and bent an ear to his prating about divine right and trial by compassion and other phrases cooked in kitchens far from the heat that makes bread rise. He stood with Renly's absence like a hole in the air and with Stannis' absence like an index finger tapping the map of a rock in the sea. He wrote letters by the dozen and set his seal upon them until the wax stained his thumbs. To Stannis, words of law, words of invitation, a promise of the city kept and clean. To Lord Mace Tyrell, words of condolence, words that spoke of Lord Renly's leaving without naming flight, words that asked for grain and for calm, as if calm were cargo that could be shipped. To Lord Tywin, a curt notice of the Queen's justice, a command to call back his reavers, a list of names of men taken and hung in the Riverlands whose deaths lay now at his door if he did not recall his dogs. To Lisa Arryn, sharp words and softer ones that asked for sense. To Robb, a letter that did not get written. He carried it in his head and recited it to himself under his breath until he could bear to write the first line. To Catelyn, another that ruined his hand and made the wax puddle. He tried to keep from telling her that he had done what he had always told himself he must one day do. He wrote instead of the children, of Sansa and Arya sent north, and of the 3 golden-haired ones, he had not put into the dark with their mother. He did not write fear, but it soaked the vellum nonetheless. He ordered the city watch to the gates and the mouths of alleys. He sent men into taverns to sit and listen and throw a copper in only when the songs went too ugly. He had bread bought from upriver at a premium price and flour seized from bakers who hoarded. Littlefinger had opinions about coin. Ned let him talk until the sound unnerved him and then gave the steward his seal for the treasury and the command to open a chest as if prying open a miser's jaws with an iron bar. Coin is a shield, Littlefinger said. Not so shining as steel, but larger. Spend it to save the day, Ned said. Leave tomorrow for tomorrow. My favorite kind of accounting, Littlefinger murmured, and set about making certain that tomorrow would require him all over again. Toward afternoon, Varys swept in with a scroll case in his hands. Thin lips pursed as if he had stolen something and was looking for the place to hide it. "From Dragonstone," he said. "The wax smells of seaweed." Ned broke the seal and let the words come like blows. Stannis wrote as if hammering nails into a board, short strokes, no music. He thanked Ned for his service to the realm. He acknowledged the Queen's crimes as if reading from a ledger. He scorned Renly's impertinence without naming him. He declared his intention to accept the crown according to law, to cleanse the court of corruption, to hold his niece and nephews in safe keeping until such time as the faith might find its breath and pronounce upon their fates. "He means to cut out the rot," Varys said, listening to the letters slide. "He does not say he will use a knife so much as a saw. He says what the law says," Ned replied. Varys tipped his head. "A thing can be legal and still flay the realm. Then perhaps the realm will learn to guard its skin," Ned said, and Varys's eyes went to his face with a flash of something like respect and something like pity. "What of Melisandre?" the eunuch asked casually. "He has her still, I am told." Ned looked up sharply. "Who?" "The Red Woman," Varys said. "A priestess of a strange god with a stranger appetite. She has a way of making fire speak." His hands rolled gently as if smoothing the hems of the future. "Stannis will not be ruled by a witch," Ned said. He said it as a man says the sky is above and the earth below. He did not say the rest, that if Stannis saw power in a witch's hand, he would take the hand and not apologize to the gods for it. Varys' smile did not touch his eyes. "Of course," he said. Evening thickened and the city found its night shapes. Torches made islands in the streets, and between them anything might grow. Ned stood on a battlement and looked out over the Blackwater. No sails moved. Beyond the turn, where the river widened into the bay, lanterns pricked at anchor where the royal fleet bobbed like a herd of quiet cattle. He wondered what Stannis' sails looked like at this hour, what Melisandre's red felt like in a wind. He thought of Tywin's banners moving along roads lit red by houses. He thought of Robb in Winterfell, counting the miles south with his fingers because boys make numbers physical. He thought of Catelyn sitting in a high room somewhere and making prayer beads of facts. He slept little. In dreams he saw a hall of faces, lit from below, and each had Cersei's eyes. He woke with his hand gone to the place on his chest where the protector's chain had hung earlier, as if he could fend off the weight. At dawn, a courier's horse came into the yard with lather dripping like fat from a roast. The man threw a letter to a squire and slid off the saddle before the animal stopped moving. He would have fallen if two grooms had not leapt for him. The seals were from the west, red wax with a lion's head pressed deep. It was not Tywin Lannister's hand. It was Kevin's, smoother and more practical. Words were in it that might have been balm if the day had been another and if Ned were another man. Condemnation, aye, but cool. Regret for the loss of the queen as one regrets a valued mare. Anger leashed in words like prudence and rumor and slander. There were lines that would serve in places where line's value is measured in coin. The queen's sons are the king's by law. The assertions of bastardy are wicked and false. The realm shall judge Lord Stark's unlawful execution before the gods and men. There were words meant to comfort a boy in a tower and to alarm a city in a hall. The Lord of Casterly Rock rides to answer the murders. His son Jaime brings justice for the Riverlands. The West remembers. Ned read it twice and then passed it to Varys without comment. Varys read and sighed. "They will come," the eunuch said. "They were coming," Ned answered. "Now they will come with their excuses polished." He sent a note to the sept, instructing that the black cloths be hung higher. Men go easier under shadow. He had no time for his own mourning. He had men to place and food to coax and 1,000 tiny cuts to keep from bleeding into one wide wound. He moved Sansa's things from her chamber to a room off the Tower of the Hand with a narrow slit of a window and a view of stone. It was a guarding gesture. It felt like a cruelty. He had her maid replaced with one who had never worn a lion on her breast. He set a pair of Winterfell men at her door, Hullen's cousin, a man with a neck like stacked stones. and a lad whose name he should have remembered without having to ask Jory to tell him the week before Jory died. He told Sansa she could keep one little dog. She said she did not like dogs anymore. He told her she could read if she liked. She said she did not like reading either. He stood in the doorway and felt her silence like winter in a courtyard. He did not make it warmer. By midday, tidings had begun to arrive like the first fleas of a summer plague. Renly's banner had been seen on the road south with 50 knights and a store of coin. The men at the gate had counted 2 wagons full of well-packed chests. Loras Tyrell's armor had glimmered in the morning like a sun caught in a web. He had not turned his head to look at the city he left. In the river, a fisher skiff had found the carcass of a boar bumping up from its cast. The men had cut it loose with solemn faces, as if they had struck a king's head from his body a second time. In the Street of the Sisters, a seamstress had been beaten for calling the queen a snake. In the Street of Flower, a man who had loved Cersei better than he ought had torn a tapestry to make a shroud for a loaf and been given a whipping for it by the baker. The city trembled, but it did not break. That afternoon he convened the small council for a reading of the late king's will before the lords of the court and the captains of the keep. He did it in the throne room not because he loved drama, he did not, but because the chair at the end of a long room makes words heavier. Men eaten up with small pomps came to see the place where their lives might be ambulanced or buried. He did not sit on the Iron Throne. He stood below it on the second step, and the chair threw its ugly shadow down as if it were trying to swallow his boots. He read, and when he came to Protector the word did not stick in his throat. When he spoke rightful, he could feel the ripple in the room like wind in a wheat field. Heads turning to catch who else turned. Pycelle intoned a prayer to ready the city for a season of humility and declared a vigil and a procession. Littlefinger whispered a jest to a man whose name he would forget tomorrow. Varys folded his hands and looked impressed by the number of ears in the room. Barristan's white cloak was a streak of clean in all the murk. Janos Slynt stood with his men at the base of the stairs, hand on the pommel of a sword he would never draw first. The captains of the gates had their mouths pursed. Their attention was a narrow reed through which the words went like water. The High Septons Jr. was there as well, face powdered at the jowls with flour from the temple kitchens, and he nodded every time a god's name was mentioned as if he had been the one to teach the gods the trick. When the reading ended, there were words to be spoken from the floor. They came, as Ned had expected, in a cough from the faith, in a sneer from a minor Lannister cousin whose doublet had 2 lions on it lest anyone fail to count one, in a polished suggestion from Littlefinger that the city would be calmer if Joffrey appeared upon the steps to be blessed. Ned did not permit it. He did not permit much else but the ventilation of breath. After, in the antechamber, Littlefinger drifted near, the way a silk ribbon drifts and binds something and makes it prettier just by being there. "You have done a brave thing," he said, and the words were not a compliment. Brave things in King's Landing are another name for foolhardy. I wonder if you have men enough to enjoy the end of it. "I will have the men I have," Ned said. "Ah," Littlefinger said. "That is my favorite kind of arithmetic." He tilted his head. Janos Slynt came to me to ask if the watch's pay would continue to arrive more or less on time, more if possible. I told him the realm was in excellent hands and that hands generally have some coin in them. The watch are safely yours, of course, as they are always safely the watch's. But men love to be remembered. A gift will make them twice your own for a week and half again your own for a month. If you ask them to beat a crowd, they will do it more gently if their purses are heavy. "I will give them what is theirs," Ned said. "Men always imagine more is theirs," Littlefinger murmured, "especially when the more is yours." He smiled and then lowered his voice to a conspirator's softness. "There are whispers from the rock already. A gold cord stretched through the city's rats. If you do not feed the rats your crumbs, they will eat the bait and then your stores." "Thank you for the kindness," Ned said and turned away. He had not the patience for Baelish's weaving today. He had a city to keep from tearing out its own throat with its teeth. By evening, banners of black had been hung at the sept and the line of mourners already stretched from the statue of the mother to the steps of the iron gate. A woman had brought a baby to be touched by the bier and swore that its fever broke at once because the king had always loved babes. A man had fainted in the heat. A boy had stolen a candlestick and been caught by a hand that came from nowhere. He wept and gave it back and vowed to bring it to the smith the next day to be melted into arrowheads for the watch. Ned stood in shadow and watched the city test the shape of its sorrow like a tongue testing the edge of a new tooth. That night, as torches sputtered in the damp and the sea air crept redolent and salt, he stood in his solar with a map unrolled and a cup going warm in his hand. The door opened without a knock, and Ser Barristan entered and bowed. "My Lord Hand," he said, "forgive me." "There is nothing to forgive," Ned told him. "There is something to remark," Barristan said. "The Kingsguard are 7, and 1 is not here. Ser Jaime has abjured his vows and gone to his father's banners. We are 6. You are 5, Varys said from the hearth, where he had insinuated himself without sound. "Ser Aerys Oakhart is with Princess Myrcella. Ser Mandon Moore is at the Red Keep. Ser Boros Blunt is with Prince Tommen. Ser Marantrant is with Prince Joffrey. Ser Barristan Selmy stands here. Ser Preston Greenfield was with the Queen," Barristan finished. He closed his eyes very briefly, and it did not diminish him. "He died this morning." "How?" Ned asked, though the day had already filled his mouth with the taste of such questions. "An old woman threw a pot of boiling broth," Barristan said, "in the street, while he walked to the September. He tripped and the men following him trampled him. It was squalid," he said, and for once his composure faltered. "He deserved a cleaner death. Many men will not have clean anythings for a long while," Ned said. "Make your 5 be 10. If the watch must lend white cloaks for a week, so be it." "Their cloaks would not be white," Barristan said dryly. "Then they will take a hardness in their hands they have not yet learned," Ned said. "Stand them where they can learn it without being required to be flawless." Barristan bowed. "As you command." He hesitated as he turned and then looked back. "It was the right thing," he said simply, and was gone. The bells had gone quiet. The city exhaled. The smell of smoke came through the leaded panes, soft as a memory of winter fires. Ned drank his wine and found in it the metallic trace of a cup that had not been well rinsed. He set it down, unpleased. He thought of Catelyn's hands and the way she would set a cup down if it displeased her, the crease between her brows and the quiet with which she made less of a thing. He thought of Robb reading the words he had finally written, watching them march across the page like the men he would have to command sooner than any father would wish for his son. He thought of Jon at the wall, of ghosts and cold and honor honed thin by hunger. He thought of the name Stannis and how it tasted like iron. He thought of Tywin's jaw, a hinge of stubborn metal. He went to the window and stood there until dawn had laid its pale cloth over the roofs again. The day came on like a man exhausted, who must nonetheless carry water. He turned to meet it. Across the narrow sea of roofs and alleys, far upon a different stone, Stannis Baratheon stood on the wind-wrung battlements of Dragonstone with his jaw set so hard a man might take it for granite at a distance. The Red Woman stood at his shoulder, hair cold flame in the morning, eyes as deep as a well. Davos Seaworth kept his place 3 steps back, a man used to watching other men decide if they loved law more than luck. "They have done it," Stannis said. His voice was flat. It neither condemned nor praised. It weighed. "They have killed the Queen," Melisandre said in a voice that caressed the letter. "They have cut away a rot. Now the wound may be cleansed and closed." "It is no wound that closes without a scar," Davos ventured. He scratched absently at his beard, which had begun to find salt among the pepper. "A scar pulls a man differently." Stannis's mouth twitched. It might have been humor on another face. "A scar reminds a man of what he has survived," he said. "Septon in there, what is his name, Cresson, will wail about holy law and the Queen's place in it. He will summon compassion. Compassion is a great word among men who do not seat a kingdom upon their letterstrokes. The realm likes to pretend its laws are wooden and can be carved to fit any chair. They are iron." Davos glanced at Melisandre and away. "Iron rusts. Not in men like me," Stannis said. "I must go to King's Landing. I have written my claim. Now we will take it." The red woman smiled without showing teeth. "In the light of the Lord of Light, you are anointed already," she murmured. "The fires approve. They show me a crown upon your head. The fires show you many crowns, and you speak of the one that sits most comfortably on your tongue," Stannis said without heat. "Do not think to rule me, woman. I am ruled by law." "Law is a cold thing," she said. "The Lord's fires are warm." Davos looked down at his hands and remembered lines of tar, the wheel of a ship sewn into his palms by years. He had liked Stannis because the man kept a promise even when it ill-suited him, because he had taken a smuggler's fingers and then made him a knight and given him a holdfast on a spit of land no lord's eyes had ever desired. He distrusted the Red Woman because she made the Lord's name slide into a man's bones like heated wine and swirl there. "You will need ships," he said, simple as wood. "I will have them," Stannis said. "The royal fleet is at anchor by the city. Some will come to me when I show them a king and not a boy. The rest we will burn in the river when I chain it and pull them into the fire." His eyes moved to Davos. "You will speak to Salador-san. He will ask for a price so high you will think the man a singer at a fair," Davos said. "And I will pay it," Stannis said. "We will need a singer. He may as well be mine." He turned then and went down into the keep, into the steely-smelling corridors where men bent over maps and counted barrels. The Red Woman glided beside him. Davos followed. Somewhere below, Maester Cresson sat with a letter from Ned Stark in his trembling hands and loved the part of it that spoke of law and feared the part that gave the law into Stannis' iron. He would do a foolish thing soon, out of love for the old gods and the old order and for the boy Stannis had once been. Davos would watch it and wish to pull the old man's hand back and know he could not. Far to the west, in a hall of red stone, Lord Tywin Lannister sat with a map of the Riverlands spread under his plate as if he meant to salt the ink and eat it. Kevan stood beside him and said little. The old lion's mouth was a chiseling instrument. News had come in. The ugly square letters of Lord Stark's public reading, the smoother script of the hand's private command to withdraw, the flurries of lesser hands calling for calm and declaring loyalty and asking for guineas as if they were gulls. Tywin did not bluster. He turned a knife slowly with 3 fingers. His eyes were flat. "They have killed your daughter," Kevan said at last, "because someone must say the word. They have put the boy in a tower. They took her head from her because she went at them with her teeth," Tywin said. He might have been discussing a mare who had bitten her handler and caught the crop. "She did not intend to go quietly." "No," Kevan said. "The boy," Tywin went on, "is mine whether lion blood in him or no. He is mine. They have handled him as if he were a pail." His hand tightened briefly on the knife, and the edge bit his thumb. He did not look at the bead of blood. "We will take him. We will punish the man who dared. We will show the realm that you do not pull a hair from a lion's mane and go to sleep well afterward." Kevan nodded. There was comfort, in a way, in Tywin's fury, because it meant the world had not tilted entirely from its accustomed axis. Jaime will take the Tully patrimony and knot it," Tywin said. "He will tie a rope around the neck of their lord and drag him behind a horse until the city hears his heels scraping. If he cannot, he will set their field to fire and hang their cousins and say their names under his breath so that he need not know which to grieve." Kevan swallowed and chose his words. "Cersei is dead, brother." "Yes," Tywin said, "and that is as much grief as I will allow myself until the man who ordered it is dead as well." "Stark will hide behind law," Kevan said. "Then I will come with law," Tywin said, "and with swords also. I will show him that law written by a traitor's hand is worth as much as the piss used to wet the quill. I will send a letter to the High Septon and remind him of the days when the faith stood with the king and not with northern wolves who learn the Seven's names only when they come south to take their bread. I will send coin to this Janos Slint and to whatever other rats hoard grain in that city. He will swear to the man with more cheese." He stood, the map slithering, and went to the window. The sun struck his face and turned his hair to dull gold that had been hoarded too long. "Send ravens," he said. "All of them." On the high roads, the ravens began to take the air. Their ragged wings stirred the hot wind and sent black syllables across a land that had never been good at reading them. Men looked up from their plows and saw a blot moving and did not know if it meant rain or blood. Women closed shutters with their elbows because their hands were full of bread and babies. Boys stared and put stones in their pockets for no reason they could have named. In the keep, Ned gave over to sleep only when sleep slipped in and took him by the collar. It dragged him down without grace. He dreamed he stood on a field of white cloth and men were painting upon it with black ink, words that wounded. He woke with the midbell and went to stand on the wall again. The city was quieter than it had any right to be. It was gathering itself for something, like a man squatting before a jump. At mid-morning, he went to the sept to stand with the dead man's people while they wept. The cool air of the dome was a salve after the yard's glare. Light filtered down through colored glass and painted pious pictures on cheeks that had not been clean in weeks. The queen lay beneath a canopy clothed in silk, black hair polished on the pillow as if some hand could not bear to see it wild. The king lay in state, face less like himself than ever, noble in a way he had never been in life. People filed past and whispered, blessings, curses, confessions, bargains. A man laid a sprig of rosemary and then snatched it back again when he saw the guard's eye, as if he feared the gods would waste it. Ned stood with no words on his tongue and his hands heavy. He touched the bier when no one was looking, not to invoke, not to pray, but because some part of him needed the truth of wood under his fingers to keep him from thinking he had imagined the last year. He felt the grain and the old sap and the polish of oil. He let go. Outside the sept, under the light, Littlefinger fell into step beside him, as if he had timed it to deprive him of the brief pleasure of walking unaccompanied. "Do you know," he said conversationally, "that the only time I have seen the High Septon without rings on his fingers was in a bath?" "No," Ned said. "I do not know that." "He has a liking for the suds," Littlefinger continued. "I have a liking for seeing men naked when I have only seen their clothes. You learn a great deal." "I have no such liking," Ned said. "Ah," Littlefinger sighed. "You are still so young." His eyes danced over the crowd. "The sept's back doors are being used. Men of modest means and immodest hopes go in there. They say their prayer into priests' ears and drop their coin into priests' hands and think the gods cannot count the difference. We shall have a proclamation from the faith by sunset. It will say a great deal of nothing, and all of it will be aimed at making us feel that something pure has been violated. The faith likes to be pure. It makes them smell interesting." Ned ignored him as best he could and went back to the keep. He met Varys in the corridor outside his solar, the eunuch's face very serious for once. "There is a boat," Varys said, "from Dragonstone. Davos Seaworth is aboard it." "Already," Ned said. He should not have been surprised. Stannis set tasks and sent men. He did not wait to see if the heavens agreed. "The Onion Knight," Varys murmured, amused by small ironies. "He wishes to speak to you quietly." Ned went down to the water door where the smell of tar and hemp and damp made a more honest world than the halls above. There, in the shadow of the quay, stood a man with a battered face and the eyes of someone used to salt burning them. He bowed, not low, but lower than a lord to a lord, and straightened with his dignity intact. "Lord Hand," Davos said. "Ser Davos," Ned said. "You come quickly." "I am bid," Davos said. "And when Stannis bids a man, he goes as if tied to the back of a horse. He sends you this." He handed over a letter, folded and sealed in the same sea-scented wax, brief where the last had been long. It named a day not far off, when Stannis would enter the city by water. It named a place to moor. It named terms for the handover of authority as if authority were a ring one could slip off and on. It named, with care, the children's safety. Ned read and thought of chains across rivers. "He will make a display," Davos said. "He believes in display only when it proves a point. He will bring ships enough that the men on the walls will count and be pleased by his prudence. He will bring priests, perhaps, though that is more the Red Woman's way." "She will come?" Ned asked. Davos's mouth went crooked. "She will," he said. unless Stannis sends her to his bed. He does not often. He doesn't care for candles beyond their light. Then I will prepare the city to receive him, Ned said. The gates by water will be open at the hour named. The gold cloaks will stand quiet. The boy and girl and boy will not bear witness. Davos nodded. He asks that you keep Joffrey from the September, from windows, from balconies. He does not wish stones to fly. I will, Ned said. He folded the letter and looked up. Did you see Renly upon the road? I saw the dust of him, Davos said. He moves quick when he is afraid he will be caught. He will not be caught. He has men with horses and men with purses. He will make a court out of picnic tables if that is what he must. And Tywin, a lion in tall grass, Davos said. He crouches. It is not his way to waste a pounce. He shifted, a man uneasy with being the bearer of more than one unwelcome truth. There is one other thing, my lord. The Red Woman says there are shadows in this city that will live longer than the men casting them. She says the black will come in the east as well as from the west if the night is not kept at bay. I do not much like her prophecies, but I would rather offend her than the sea. Street. She speaks of fire. She speaks a lot of fire. Men who worship fire see it everywhere, Ned said. Our gods see it less, but they see winter where it is, and they say it is coming. Davos smiled very slightly. Aye, he said. So it always does. I will go, then. If any of your men would like a lift south of the Mander, I have a hold's worth of salt fish to sell and room between barrels. Go, Ned said, and with him went the smell of tar and faith, each stubborn in its own way. The day conspired to be busy to its last minute. Ned met with the captains of the city's dramans and had 3 removed when their answers sounded like alehouse boasts. He sent Tomard to the Street of Steel with orders to buy every link of chain the smiths could be sparing of. He intended to have a chain ready even if he hoped never to use it. He had the Tower of the Hand's old armor hauled down and hammered to shape where required. He sent ravens again, to warn the Riverlands that if the West did not withdraw men they must stand. He had a guard placed at the mud gate whose only task was to count boats. He ordered the gates shut to sellswards who arrived in groups larger than 5. He told the kitchens to make a stew of barley and beans and to give bowls to those who came to the sept with tears. He wrote again to Catelyn and crossed out half the words before the wax could see them. Night fell like a curtain dropped too late in a bad play. He ate bread and cheese again and found that it tasted more of straw than grain. He drank water and imagined it as snow on the tongue. He told himself he would sleep and did not. In the morning, he walked the wall above the river. The tide sucked at the pilings with the sound of a giant sipping from a too small cup. In the distance, where the river widened, he could make out shapes that might have been ships or might have been daydreams floating on the haze. He sniffed the wind. It smelled of sea and city and a smaller, more personal rankness. Fear. When he returned to the yard, Ser Meryn Trant waited with a mouth as tight as a purse. The prince, he meant Joffrey, is ill. Is he? Ned said. From what ailment? Anger, Meryn said. The barest ripple of amusement passed through his voice. If a stone dropped in a well in winter can be called amusement. He threw a cup. He struck the hound. The hound laughed. He struck again. The hound did not laugh. He will not eat. Good, Ned said, and the man blinked. If he does not eat, he will be weak. If he is weak, he will be quiet. Leave him be. He saw Meryn's jaw move and added, do not strike him in turn. If he strikes you, tell him I will strike him myself next time. Then tell him I am too busy to keep my word. Meryn blinked again. As you command. Ned heard, too, of Myrcella sitting in the window and not moving until the sun went past the sill, leaving her in the dark, and of Tommen asking for a kitten and then hating it because it would not sit upon his hand exactly the way a memory had. He heard of Sansa refusing a tray and then eating everything upon it half an hour later with a fury that would have bent a spoon. He heard of Arya sleeping under a cart, her hand on a stick, her head upon a bundle of rags, and he took not comfort but direction from these things. The world is what it is, and the young survive it by being young. On the 3rd morning after the bells, The cry came down from the walls that sails had been sighted on the river. Ned went to the battlements and saw, through a blue haze and a skipping glare, the gray and blue of Stannis' banners and the glimmer of oars. The fleet did not come in as a rush. It approached with the carefulness of a man carrying a hot pot. Upon the leading galley, a standard stood that had been made in a hurry and done well nonetheless. Yellow-crowned stag upon black, no crown upon the stag's head yet, the absence as pointed as a sign carved in stone. Ned had the river gate thrown wide. He had men arrayed like beads. He had the city watch posted where they could be seen and not easily counted. He had Barristan at his shoulder and Janos Slint at the foot of the stairs. He had Pycelle at hand with a speech and Varys with a sigh. He did not have Littlefinger. The man had found something else to count this hour. The galley nosed toward the quay and bumped there with a wooden sigh. Stannis Baratheon came down its gangplank like a man stepping through a memory he disliked and meant to be done with. His face was cut hawkish by sun and temper. Melisandre came behind, a step and a half, and her presence was a heat his northern skin disliked even at a distance. Davos followed with the most honest shoes in the party. "Lord Stannis," Ned said, and inclined his head the degree due the king's brother who would be king. "Lord Stark," Stannis answered. He did not bend. He did not need to. He had the law to do his bending. His gaze swept the yard and settled on the open doors of the Red Keep as a wolf's eye settles upon a fold in a hillside that might hide a stag. "You have the city." "I have a city," Ned said. "Whether it is the one I wanted to keep, we will learn." Stannis allowed the flicker of a grim smile. "Good," he said. "Men who do not enjoy the work do it best." He stepped toward the doors. "I will see the throne, and then we will wash the dirt from this place." Melisandre's eyes found Ned's as she passed. "You are not what they say you are," she murmured. "You are colder and you are warmer both." "I am a man," Ned said. "I am not a tale." She smiled, and the smile was a thing with teeth. They passed in, and the doors closed upon them like lips upon a secret. The city paused as if at a crossing, choosing which street to take. The bells were quiet. The sea breathed. Far away in the west, a sound began that had not yet arrived at the walls of King's Landing. The tramp of men and the creak of harness and the distant, low growl of a lion beginning to remove the meat from a bone. Ned went in after them to stand at the foot of a chair that had seen more men bleed than any battlefield and to say, for the last time in that hall as protector, "By the laws of men and gods, by the words of the dead king and by the truth of the living, I present Stannis of House Baratheon, Robert's brother and rightful king." The words went up and hung there, and the hall held them like breath held too long. Stannis mounted the steps. He did not sit. He put his hand upon the cold iron and left it there a moment and took it away, as if the throne and he had exchanged a quiet, mutual disgust. "We will not wear a crown until the faith has sung and the people have heard," Stannis said. "We will not play at kingship with baubles. We will be king by law and by necessity. That is enough." His eyes found Ned. "You have done your part," he said. "Now you will do the next." Ned's leg ached as if it were tired of holding him up. He did not let it show. "Name it," he said. "Clean this place," Stannis said. "Clean it of men who pledged to the woman you killed and to the boy she made. Clean it of coin that clinks with the wrong head. Clean it of whispers that do not serve the realm. Keep Joffrey and his brother and sister where they will not stir the city. Call banners. The west must be met. Send to the Vale. Bring your wife's sister to heal with parchment or steel. I will take the river into my hand. I will show Lord Tywin that a chain does not only hold, it pulls." He looked over Ned's shoulder at the doorway through which Melisandre had not bothered to hide that she stood watching. "And keep the fires small," he added, the ghost of a joke in his voice, "until we need them large." There was more said and more to be done. Orders flew like doves and hawks both. The city took on a different angle underfoot, as if a foot of it had been dug out and repacked. The day turned, and with it turned the year, and with it turned the realm. Men went to their tasks. Women set their jaws. Children learned, as they always do, what to be afraid of by watching the hands around them. That night, Ned stood again at the window and seen the river pick up the stars in its slow hand and carry them down toward the dark mouth. He thought of Winterfell, of hills and fog and the long patient labor of trees. He thought of the wall, where men worked because there was nothing else to do if you wished to keep the world from being cut in two. He thought of the chair with its knives and of Stannis's hand upon it, and of the way the man had drawn it back as if he disliked the feel. He did not think of Cersei, who had been the blade he had grasped that day and felt cut him and would cut him in the places he could not yet see. He set his mind to sleep as a cook sets a lid on a pot. He closed his eyes. He got what sleep the city was willing to spare him, which was not much. He took it because a man cannot choose the size of his portion, only whether he eats. In the morning there would be another letter, another counsel, another horse to be stalled, a mother to be soothed, a blade to be ground, a prayer to be offered to gods who do not answer. In the morning there would be men at the north gates and women at the south, and the quiet menace of a fleet in the river, and the louder one of a lion on the road. In the morning there would be a boy in a tower with a cup he had not thrown yet, and a girl somewhere on a low road dressed as a kitchen maid who would think of a wolf and of a dance and not know whether to laugh or cry. He slept without knowing the hour, and the city lay around him like a beast that had eaten too much and now dreamt of knives. Stannis did not linger before courtiers to let the air fill with tattle. He crossed the hall as a soldier crosses a yard, fast and without use for eyes that waited to be met. He stopped only once, at the foot of the throne, and turned his head as if he heard a sound no one else heard. The Iron Throne did have a sound, Ned thought. Metal speaking to metal, old blood flaking under new hands. Then Stannis moved on, toward the Tower of the Hand, as if the law were a tool kept there and he meant to put it to work before it rusted. They sat with the door closed on more men than the room suited. Davos came in without ceremony and stood at the back as if he were used to smoke behind him instead of tapestries. Melisandre took a place at the window and made the sunlight feel as if it had something to prove. Pycelle wanted a chair brought and had to stand instead, puffing. Varys folded himself into a corner and might have been a painted screen if not for the fact that painted screens do not smile. Ser Barristan stood with his hands behind him, the white of his cloak a stripe of cool along a hot wall. Janos Slynt arrived late and full of apologies that smelled of garlic and coin. Stannis did not sit. He set both hands on Ned's table and spoke as if he had already written these words somewhere and was merely reciting them. We will keep the city. We will gird it. Law first. Comfort if there's time left. We need bread, Ned said. And quiet. You will have your bread, Stannis replied. Quiet we will make. He began with the easy firmness of a man who believes that clarity is mercy. The watch would keep to the streets and to the walls. Slynt would answer with his head for any blood spilled without cause and with his post for any blood not spilled when cause demanded. Slynt nodded so hard his jowls clapped softly. The river would be choked with a chain if necessary. Smiths would be set to links morning and night. The fleet would be counted and crews paid today, and not when someone remembered to count the coppers under their pillow. The Crownland's lords would be summoned, the Storm Lords twice. The Reach would be offered peace if it kept still and salt if it moved. And the faith? Varys asked gently. They have a way of noticing when kings are made. We will let them sing, Stannis said. They may wash me with their oils if it pleases them. They may put a crown upon my head so long as they don't imagine they are putting a collar upon my neck. Pycelle coughed. Your Grace, if we are to say so, there is also the matter of the Grand Maester's duty. It is I who must. Stannis looked at him as a man looks at a bent nail. It is you who must return to the Citadel, he said. I will have a Grand Maester whose beard does not wag when Lord Tywin tugs it. Pack your pots. A letter will inform the conclave that the throne requires a different chain. Pycelle's mouth opened and closed twice like a carp. Your Grace, the choice is the Citadel's to present and the king's to accept, Stannis said. And I do not accept you. Go. He went, trailing the sound of insulted learning and the smell of dust. Varys watched him go with an expression of mild grief one might reserve for a vase broken by a favorite cat. Littlefinger had not yet come, which Ned found a mercy. He would come. He always did when there were crumbs to be gathered. "You will have your counsel," Stannis said to Ned then. "Stay his hand. You have done what I could not. Place your body between the law and all who would trample it. I do not like your way in a room, Stark, but I like what you do when the room is too full. Stay." Ned inclined his head. "I will do my duty," he said, and the words were easy because there was nothing in them he did not mean. Melisandre's voice flowed into the pause like hot wine. "Duty is a cold fire," she said. "It warms no one unless it is fed with true wood. There are logs in this city that burn with a light the Lord favors." Stannis's jaw worked. Ned felt the shift of the room as men's eyes moved without moving their heads. "Say what you mean," Stannis ordered. "The children," she said, and she meant it gently. "King's blood quickens the air. The Lord's fire eats well at such meat. Your enemies will bring darkness. Shadows are born of men, but shadows can beget shadows. If you would be strong." "No," Ned said before Stannis could speak. His voice was not loud, but it found everything it needed and filled it. "No one will lay a finger on those children while I breathe." Melisandre's smile was an ember. "You will not always be breathing, Lord Stark. Nor will you," he said. "Until then, the law is not your God's servant." Stannis made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been annoyance, and with him was often both. "We are not burning children," he said, "or women, or men unless they've earned it. The law first, and if your God disapproves, priestess, he may write me a letter." He looked to Ned again. "You will keep the boy and girl and boy under guard. The white cloaks will be white again. If any man goes near their door with a candle in his hand that is not meant for reading, break his wrist and his candle both." "Done," Ned said, and meant it twice. When the meeting ended, Davos waited and did not withdraw with the others. He had not spoken a word and seemed suspicious of the ones in the air, as if the room had been peppered and he had not yet felt which way the wind would blow them. Ned gestured, and Davos came forward, made awkward for the first time in the day. "My Lord Hand," he said, "I am no courtier. I do not know what a man is meant to say in a room like that to men like these. But I know water. I know a harbor. I know a fleet that was not meant to be commanded by men who forgot what a rope feels like. I have spoken to the captains. Some will be faithful to the coin. Some are faithful to the idea of a king. Some are faithful to the notion of getting home alive. If you feed the first and talk the second and frighten the third, you will have a fleet that will hold the river like a cork in a bottle. I will have your counsel at that table," Ned said. "Stannis will like it less when you disagree with him. Disagree anyway." Davos's mouth tilted. "Disagreeing with him is the only way I know to keep him from burning his own hand to see if fire feels different in a king," he said. "There's another thing. The watchmen on the quays. Some take coin from men whose faces are with their backs." He lifted his palm and set it down. "I will say no more of names unless you wish them. But men must know their captain is not selling the small boat for a bigger one." "Say the names to me," Ned said. He took them and tasted the salt on them and found Janoslin's name among them because it was a name found often in such lists and because there are men who like to draw their pay twice. He thanked Davos and sent him to the river with a writ and 3 men who would count without losing track when a purse brushed their knee. That afternoon, a different kind of battle line formed. Barristan Selmy stood before the Maiden's Tower with 2 knights of the watch and a pair of Winterfell men, and a cool look that had served him on fields wetter than this stone. Melisandre swayed up the stair with a little smile, and the air swam around her as if it were suddenly thickened. She stopped at the landing that lay in shadow no matter the hour and looked at the white cloak. "The Lord's light seeks to shine in all rooms," she said. "The Lord's light can find warmth in the yard," Barristan said. "It is hot enough under this tower. I have no wish to harm a child," she murmured. "Only to see. You will see when they walk into a hall," Barristan replied. "Until then, you will not." Her eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger, with interest. "You are a true knight," she said. "I am a man standing where I am told," he answered. His sword remained sheathed, and the sheath seemed dangerous enough. She turned away with languor, as if she had only strolled up for a view of the river. When she was gone, one of the gold cloaks let out a breath he had not realized he had caught, and Baratheon told him to hold the next one tighter in his chest. Stannis' first day was a day of removing weak roots. By evening, Pycelle had been escorted to a chamber with a lock on the outside and a quill within, there to write the citadel and be ignored while the conclave counted their hours and their grudges. The man looked stunned that his chain had not proved a sewer grate. Janos Slynt had been kept as captain for the hour. Ned could not pry a stone out of a wall without mortar to replace it. He went to his writing table and sent for a man whose name had been on the city's list of those who did not look away when work went wrong. Jacelyn Bywater was summoned from the wharves, where he was known for bringing a truncheon down with exactly as much force as a skull required and never a hair more. Bywater came with salt on his boots and saluted without drama. When Ned asked him what he thought of the Watch, he replied, "The Watch think of themselves," which was an answer better than flattery. "You will be my hand inside that glove," Ned said. "The glove's name is Janos Slynt. For now." Bywater's mouth made the shape of a smile and then wisely did not finish it. "For now," he repeated. In the late light, Ned sent for the High Septon and received a man of middling rank with his sleeves rolled as if he had been washing cups. The High Septon himself was suddenly too infirm to walk to the keep in the heat. The underling had a list of grievances and one bold request riding beneath them like a fish under foam: that the question of princely bastardy be put before the Seven with witnesses and oaths, and the poor permitted to watch. The Seven, in such matters, had a remarkable knack for hearing the law more clearly when the room was full. "Very well," Ned said. "A hearing, not a trial. The Queen is dead. We will not try a corpse." He was tired of that phrase. He would be saying it until old age if he lived that long. "And no whip. Ping of boys who shout in the nave. I will have no blood on those steps. The faith does not set boys to whipping lightly," the underling said, which was at least an admission that it sometimes did. He took the assent and made it into a blessing, promised oil and candles and a choir. He hinted, too, that the faith would prefer that the Red Woman stand outside the sept's doors, and Ned promised that she would. Varys left the meeting with his hands steepled like a man praying to a god he did not believe in. "The people will be glad to be told what to think," he murmured. "For an hour, then they will think something else. We must keep telling them." "Then we will keep telling them," Ned said. "Truth does not grow thinner when pulled more often." "That depends on the hands," Varys said sadly. Far away in the high place in the Vale where the world narrows to a blue slit and a sky that goes on forever, Catelyn sat with Ned's letter open on her lap and the mountains laid like folded cloaks on the stone below. The Ares air always smelled to her of clean linen, as if nothing messy could live here long. The letter was messy. It said the Queen was dead and that he had done it. It said the King was dead and that he had been there for the last breath and the last word. It said Sansa and Arya had been sent north. Her hands had gone cold when she read that, and then hot. It said Stannis had come. It said the Riverlands burned. It ended with her name written the way he always wrote it when he could not hold anything else in his fingers. Lisa stood at the window with little Robert in her arms. The boy's hand stuck in the collar of her dress. He stared out because he did not understand the words, and Lisa stared out because she would not swallow them. "You see?" she said. "You see? I told you the lions would tear at us if we left the heights. I told you, come back to us, cat. Bring your boy and your man and hide him under my skirts." Catelyn folded the letter very precisely. "I will go to Riverrun," she said. "My father is ill. Lord Tywin's men are in our fields. My brother will need." Lisa's laugh was faint and cracked. "Your brother will be dead if he stands on the plains and waves his pretty banner. He should come to me. I will protect him." "You," Catelyn said, and could not keep the sting out. "You who throw men through a door in your floor because a whisper says they have a lion in their pocket? Do not scold me," Lisa snapped, eyes sudden and sharp. "Do not scold me from a letter written by a man who has killed a queen in a crowded hall and thinks the city will clap for him. Do not come back here with swords behind you. I will shut the gate in your face, cat, if you bring armies to my mountain." Catelyn stood. Then keep your mountain, she said. Keep your boy, keep your fear. I will take the road. She kissed Robert's hair because he was a child and because he smelled of milk. She kissed Lisa's cheek because they had once been girls with scraped knees together. Lisa flinched as if the kiss were a sting. Ser Brynden came to her at dusk. His weathered face turned to her like a compass. "Ready?" he asked. "As I ever am," she said. "I will find my son." "Robb will come south," Brynden said. "He will run if you do not warn him not to." Boys all run at the sound of their own names shouted. "I will not warn him not to," Catelyn said. "If the riverlands burn, a Tully must douse them. We are not people who sit in towers and count cups." Bryndon's mouth curved, his eyes crinkling. "We never were," he said. "Good." In Winterfell, the ravens came in a dark rush like a cloud that had decided to unmake itself over the battlements. Robb held the leather tube and unrolled the letter with hands that wanted to be older. His hair had been cut recently. It sat wrong on his head, as if it missed the weight it had been asked to hold. He read. His face sketched a child's pain to hear of a mother's death, then rubbed it out and scribbled over it with a youth's anger before smoothing it with a man's will. He read again. Maester Luwin watched him carefully. "Well?" he asked. "They killed the queen," Robb said. His voice had a crack in it he did not yet hear. "Father killed her. The king is dead. Stannis is king. The Riverlands," he swallowed. "The Riverlands are burning. There are Lannisters in our cousins' fields." Theon took the letter with a hand too eager and pretended it was dull. "Stannis," he said. "Stannis in King's Landing. By the drowned gods, by the Seven, I'd pay to see Cersei's face when Lord Stark." He saw the look Robb gave him and forced his grin down another notch. "Begging your pardon. She was a queen." "She was a traitor," Robb said, and the word tasted like metal. "Call the bannermen. Send riders to White Harbor, to Barrowton, to the Dreadfort. We march." Luwin's eyebrows went up. "A soft forest in winter. We might send letters first," he suggested gently. "Banners are easier to raise than to feed." "Feed them," Robb said. "Father writes that Tywin Lannister sends raiders into our lands by way of the Trident. I will not sit my chair and count the coins for men who burn my uncle's wheat." "Good," said the great Jon, who had not been in the room when Robb decided but came in as if he had been summoned by the smell of war. "Good," he repeated, clapping a meaty hand on the back of a chair, which creaked in protest. "Get your sword, boy. See if it fits your hand any better than my patience does." Roose Bolton stood in the doorway with his pale eyes the color of old milk and said nothing. Theon stretched and grinned and imagined boats burning. Luwin rubbed the bridge of his nose as if the bones there might give him counsel. The ravens watched from their perches with the bright, greedy stillness of birds who know men always drop something. On the King's Road, Yoren's ragged parade slid along like a river in summer, full of things that did not belong in a river and made their own rules. The carts were as ugly as sin and just as useful. The boys wore their hunger where another lad might wear a fine sash. Sansa rode with her hood up and her eyes down, and when she lifted them she found country not so pretty as the songs had promised. The trees here were lank and the fields tired, and the inns smelled of cabbage and old anger. Arya walked when she could, because walking kept the itch down, and Yoren let her, because men do not stop a wolf pup from dragging its leash unless they want a bite. Gendry came into their day like a man shouldering through a crowd, sudden and solid. He had his hammer and a quiet that did not ask permission. He looked at Arya and saw a small fierce thing, and looked at Sansa and saw a soft, miserable one, and looked at Yoren and saw the wall where men go when they have nothing to sell but their backs. He did not like being looked at in return. At the crossroads, and the ale was foul and the stew worse, and Yoren took his men around the back and gave them cold bread rather than sit in a room where the innkeep watched their pockets as if they were rabbits. He made them sleep in the stable loft with the mice and told them to be grateful for warmth and a roof. "You want soft, you should have done crimes with more coin in 'em," he told a boy who whined. The boy shut up and dreamed of better thieving. At dawn, a small party of riders in half-mailed confusion came down the road with a haste that looked like guilt. Yoren spat sidewise and drew the carts into a copse. He had the smell for men who wanted to find what did not wish to be found. He told the boys to be mud and the girls to be rocks. Sansa could not be either, and so became a reed blowing in a ditch, and the riders did not see reeds if they did not move. Arya lay in the nettles, eyes full of spikes and joy, and watched the boots go by. One had a lion worked clumsily into its leather. She hoped it would split along the seam and the man would step in dung. They moved again when the riders were gone, and Yoren kicked Gendry lightly as he passed. "Keep your head down," he advised. "They got a picture of it now and they'll want to match it to your neck."
I'm nobody, Gendry muttered.
"You're somebody to someone with a purse," Yoren said. "That's the dangerous sort." In the west, Tyrion rode into a camp that smelled of horse and iron and men who had been told to sit still until they could do something worth getting dirty for. He dismounted before the tent he knew and tossed the reins carelessly. A groom caught them, as grooms always did for men like him. Tywin sat at a table with maps and meat on it and raised his head a fraction when his son ducked inside. "You're not dead," Tywin observed, "and you're not in chains." "I find those states preferable," Tyrion said, and poured himself wine without asking. "The brawn you hired by proxy sends his best. The Lady of the Vale sends her paranoia. The dwarf of House Lannister sends his gratitude." Tywin took a knife to a scrap of meat and cut it into smaller pieces than it deserved. "Cersei is dead," he said. "I had heard," Tyrion said, and when he sipped, the cup was heavier than it deserved. "My condolences." "They will not bring her back," Tywin said. "They will not save the man who killed her either. We will show him that lions do not forget bites." "Stark is not a small dog," Tyrion said, "and he has found himself a bigger one. Stannis has taken the city." "By law," Tywin said, and the word in his mouth sounded like a stone thrown at a bird. "Law is a thing for clerks to scratch. Men move it." "Men are moving," Tyrion agreed. "Renly moves with flowers in his hair and stormlands behind him. Stannis moves with a red woman's god and ships. Edmure moves because you have lit a fire in his fields and he is trying to stamp it with his hands. Robb Stark will move because boys move when they think it makes them men." Tywin's gaze flicked up. "What will you do?" Tyrion toasted him with his cup. "Give you counsel you won't like. Send men down the King's Road who are not fools with lions on their boots. If you want the Stark girls, you will not get them by riding in and shouting their names. You will get them by making a man like Janos Slynt open a door at night for the smell of gold. But Peter Baelish is closer to that purse than you are." "Then we will own Baelish," Tywin said, as if buying and owning were as simple as breath. "And we will own Slynt, and every man with a hand on a gate. You will go to the frays and make them choose a side with less dithering than usual. I do not care which side at first, so long as it is not the one that helps Stark. Then you will go to Harrenhal and make the rats their march in a straight line. Go. You do like to send me to places where the stone is black with ruin," Tyrion said. "Shall I take a torch to see my way?" "Take a purse," Tywin said. "Men prefer gold to light." At Bitterbridge, Renly Baratheon smiled with his mouth and tried to make his eyes learn the trick. The Tyrell encampment spread like a garden that had decided flowers were too modest and silk a better color. Mace Tyrell sweated and told jokes, and men laughed because he would be a father-in-law to a king. Loras moved like a blade slid from its sheath and cut glances from the air. Marjorie stood at her father's right hand with her demure lids and a mind like a net. When Renly looked at her, he saw, hand to the heart, that she would make a queen to be painted, and when he looked at Loras, he saw a future he liked better but could not put in a book. He chose the book because kings must be read. They crowned him in a field beneath a summer tree that had never been asked such service before. The crown was antler and green, the sun too warm for solemnities. A septon whose name no one would bother to remember spoke words that sounded very well and meant very little. Men shouted. Women threw petals. Even the horses seemed willing to believe for a moment that law could be rearranged by enough applause. When it was done, Renly stood taller than he had at dawn, because a man's back takes a while to learn the weight of a crown. "Send to Highgarden for grain," he told Mace. and the fat lord beamed as if he had been asked to bring cakes. "Send to Old Town for a letter with the conclave's seal saying that law is a thing with two mouths, one of which may be fed by younger brothers. Send riders to the Stormlands and remind them that they loved Robert not because he was oldest but because he was Robert. Tell them I am the brother who throws feasts. Stannis will throw sermons. Marjorie will look well upon a throne," Mace said cheerfully. "So will I," Renly answered, and Loras smiled with half his mouth in approval and with the other in warning. Back in the city, the day of the hearing dawned with a sky that seemed to have been scoured overnight. The dome of Baelor September caught the light and scattered it. The nave filled with a hum like bees. Ned walked in without pleasure, without dread, with the same sense he had felt the morning he had stood before a man kneeling in the snow with a confession set into the frost between his boots. The High Septon had found his legs for the day and wore rings enough to moor a ship. Stannis stood under a window that made a pattern on his shoulder like old scars. Melisandre waited outside with a patience that sent men to the other doors rather than brush her sleeve. Varys arranged himself where the echoes were kind to his voice. Littlefinger slid in late and smiled like a thief who has found a better purse than the one he was after. They called witnesses as if plucking them from the city's pockets. Tobo Mott came and spoke of the armorer's boy with black hair and the face of a king. Bara's mother stood trembling and told a story with its heart removed and its body shamefully intact. A baker's girl who had seen more than bread confessed that she had heard others say the thing she now said. It was a poor chain, but even poor chains hold a boat to the quay when the tide is slack. They read from the book Ned had once thought too dull to be dangerous. They did not bring Gendry, for Yoren had already stolen him, and the city only realizes it is missing something when it reaches for it. When it was done, the High Septon put his hands over the air as if blessing it. "The Faith has heard," he proclaimed. "The Faith recognizes the king's letter and the testimonies of men and women beneath these seven. The Faith finds that the children named Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen are not the trueborn issue of the late King Robert. The Faith declares that Stannis of House Baratheon is the rightful king. The Faith will pray for peace. Pray loud," someone called from the back, and the laughter that rose was not unkind. Ned exhaled a breath that had been stuck since before dawn. He looked at Stannis. The man had not smiled, would not smile. He nodded a hair's breadth, a grave acknowledging of a thing that had always been so and now had been said in a big room. Ned turned to go and found Littlefinger waiting like a man emerging from a hedge. "A neat morning," Peter drawled. "You do love a neat morning. Afternoons are never so tidy." "You are not wrong," Ned said. "Afternoons bring men with knives. Some of them will be mine," Littlefinger said pleasantly. "Some will be yours. That is how we keep from tripping over each other's." "Keep your knives out of children," Ned said, and watched the jape die in Baelish's mouth like a moth at a candle. In the shadow of the Sept's side door there was sudden noise, the kind that comes before words. Guards jostled. Someone shouted and swallowed it. Ned heard the wrong rhythm of a skirmish starting and moved through bodies that tried to stick to him. In the courtyard, a handful of gold cloaks had taken upon themselves to become bolder men than the day required. They had come with a cart and a hood, and if there had not been white cloaks at the foot of the tower, they might have taken a boy or girl and hustled them down alleys while the Sept's bells drowned their feet. Barristan had put one of them to the stones with the flat of his blade, and would not have needed more than half his age to keep the others from crossing that invisible line between plan and folly. Jacelyn Bywater was there too, and his men took the gold cloak's weapons quickly and without glory. He had a face made for denying men the pleasure of a struggle. Janos Slynt arrived late, breathing as if he had climbed a stair too fast, and bellowed, and made noise enough that someone not watching might have thought he had been present the whole time. Ned looked at him and saw behind his eyes a purse open and shut. After they were hauled away and the quiet put back on the stones, Ned sent for Janos Slynt. He did not see the use of waiting. He declared the man relieved of his duty with the words arranged in a row and the seal pressed at the end of them. Slynt stood very red and very still, and then tried to laugh, and then tried to threaten, and then tried to bargain. Men like Janos own a drawer with 3 handles, and they pull them in that order every time. Ned watched him empty it, Then he sent a man with a pouch of coin to Slint's house and a second man with a sealed order to put the man and his family on a ship down the Blackwater, bound for Gulltown. Bywater took the gold cloaks before the day had time to write anything foolish in them. The Watch were suddenly more Bywater's men than the city's. That was a kind of peace. Joffrey did not learn of the attempt until sunset. He threw a stool at the door and screamed so long his voice cracked like a bowstring. The hound sat by the window and cleaned his nails with a knife and said only, "Less noise, more vengeance. Keep your breath for the day you can ride it." Joffrey's eyes filled with tears, and he slapped them away with the heel of his hand. "I will hang him," he whispered. "I will hang him until his feet stop moving, and then I will send him north to his father with a note." He meant Ned. The hound looked at him with a weariness that came from something too deep to have a name and said nothing that would cost him his place. Night gathered again, as it had gathered every night since men had learned to fear it. Ned stood on the wall and watched the river prick with lanterns where Stannis' ships lay like patient cattle. He thought of Catelyn riding down mountain roads with Brynden beside her and the sky a bowl she could tip if she wanted to. He thought of Robb and the boy's hand closing over a sword hilt and the way it would feel like a father's hand at first. He thought of Sansa in a brown cloak eating her anger with her bread and of Arya walking with her stick like a girl in a mummer's play who had found the wrong prop and made it right by will. He thought of Tywin Lannister feeding a fire with maps. He thought of Renly with flowers stuck in his hair by men who wanted the smell on themselves. Down in the yard Davos spoke softly to Stannis, who listened with the patience of a man who will do as he likes and appreciates a friend who will try to stop him anyway. Melisandre turned her face to the east and closed her eyes as if the sun could hear her from over there. Varys crossed a hall in slippers and left no sound. Littlefinger sat alone long enough for a man to think it odd and set 3 sealed letters into a pouch with the gentleness of a doting nurse. Barristan Selmy leaned his back against the cold tower stone and let his eyes close for a minute without sleeping, and when a rat scuttled across the flagstones nearby, even the rat ran quiet. At dawn, Stannis had Ned called to the quay to stand by his shoulder as he spoke to captains and watermen. The tide went out and with it went some lee, till part of the city's fear, because fear likes to hide under things. Nets coiled, oars thumped. Davos spoke of currents and the way a river will hold its own secrets if asked politely. Men with hammers beat iron into links, and the sound of it was even and human and soothing. A boy slid on a wet plank and laughed, and his father cuffed him lightly and laughed as well, as if laughter had been allowed again for the first time in a week. It did not last. A rider came hot from the stone way by midday with a banner on his lance that had been dragged through 5 different kinds of brush. He fell off his horse before he decided to dismount, stumbled, and pressed a scrawled dispatch into Bywater's hand. It went from Bywater to Ned and from Ned to Stannis and from Stannis back to the heir with a grunt. Jaime Lannister, Davos read over Stannis' shoulder, because no one stopped him, and because Davos did not read slowly when it mattered. Crossed the Red Fork with a quarter of the west. Ser Edmure holds the crossing, but there's smoke along the banks. The Golden Tooth is taken. Lannister banners seen at Pink Maiden and in the fields by Lord Piper's Hall. More coming. Good, Stannis said. Now we know where to aim. Robb will march, Ned said softly. He will come to Riverrun with banners and songs and a boy's rage. He will think it enough. Will you send for him? Stannis asked. No, Ned said. He knows the road without my map. I will send men to meet him with bread and sense. He looked at the letter again and saw the shape of the realm not as lines on a page but as a series of hands groping in a dark room for the same knife. By afternoon the chain across the river had eaten enough iron to be a snake that a man could not hug. Men hauled and grunted and swore in good humor, because swearing at iron is a superstition and must be done with affection. In the Tower of the Hand, Ned scratched words across vellum until his hand cramped. He named Bywater as Lord Commander of the City Watch in all but title and pressed wax upon that truth. He wrote to Robb, to Catelyn, to Riverrun, to White Harbor, to the Eyrie even though he knew the letter would be read by a woman who wanted no sound but her own. He sealed and sealed and sealed again and thought ruefully that if vows were made of wax the world would be held fast forever. Varys slid in, small and soft-footed as a cat that has eaten and means to sleep near the hearth. "The city breathes more easily," he said. "It is a temporary condition. We should enjoy it. I will hum." "Hum loudly," Ned said without lifting his head. "Drown out the other notes." Varys sked. "You are unkind to music." His face sobered without losing its gentleness. "There is a whisper, my lord. It has a red tint. It says the priestess means to see a prince by night." "She tried," Ned said. "She found a wall with a blade behind it."
Ah, very breted.
Ser Barristan does make a very satisfying wall, but walls have cracks. You will do well to sleep in a place that does not have a window. "I will do well to sleep," Ned said. He set the quill back in the ink and wiped his fingers on a piece of old linen. "When I have spoken to Stannis about the boy." "He will want him shown," Varys murmured. "Kingizdu." They like to nod toward the children they haven't killed yet. Ned's mouth went hard. "He will not be shown. Not for sport. Not for fear." Varys did not quite smile. "You mistake me for someone who enjoys such pageants," he said. "I do not, but the people do. And sometimes the people are a knife too many in the dark. I will go and tell a story in the Street of Silk about how the new king looks better in a helm than in a crown. It will make the men who prefer crowns hiss, which will please the men who prefer helms, and the rest will be glad that someone put a word to a thing they felt and could not say." "Do that," Ned said, and the eunuch bowed and vanished in the way of men who know the doors in a house are not all the ones hung on hinges. When the last light bled out of the sky, Ned went to the maiden's tower with a book under his arm he had not had the heart to open. He stood a while with Barristan, both men facing the door. "It was easier," Ned said, "when the only door I had to guard was the one to my own hall, and the men on the other side were men I had known since they were boys." "It has never been easy," Barristan said mildly. "We merely remember the easy days more vividly because the bread was better." They both smiled, a tired crease of familiarity, and the door opened and Sansa came in behind a maid with a tray. She stopped short when she saw Ned and the book and looked at both as if they were snakes that had learned to stand. "I do not want to read," she said. "There is nothing in a book that makes a hall less ugly." "There is sometimes a door," Ned said. "Even a picture of a door that you may keep in your head until you find a real one." She stood as if she meant to hiss and then did not. "I do not like doors," she murmured. "They are only there so men can come through them when you do not wish them to." She took the tray from the maid with more force than necessary and set it down on a small table as if feeding the wood. "Eat," Ned said. "Do not let them take your strength along with everything else." She lifted her chin. "I hate you," she said again, quieter, almost like a line from a play. He nodded because he could not cure it, and left her with the book, which she would not open, and her hunger, which she would pretend not to notice. Outside, the city lay like a sleeping dog that twitches in its dreams. From the west, a breath of new smoke came on the wind that was not city smoke, fresher, angrier. From the south, a whisper came that tasted of roses. From the east, some men swore the air held a tang of salt and something like spice and something like old magic, and when they said it in taverns others laughed and said that all winds smell strange when you've had enough to drink. Ned went to his bed finally and lay down without removing all of his clothes, because a man who has learned to wake to odd noises does not unbuckle every buckle. He stared up at the green cast of light from a lamp and watched a moth spend itself against the globe. He slept when sleep finally shouldered all his worries aside and told them to wait their turn. Dawn brought the scrape of a boot outside the door, and then a knock that was polite only because the hand behind it had been taught manners very young. Ned answered and found Ser Barristan again, with Davos quick behind him. "The king," Barristan said, "begs your presence." Stannis stood at the window in Ned's solar with the city under his hand like a board and stones ranked upon it. He did not play. He stared. On the table lay a letter with Tywin Lannister's seal, broken. "He refuses," Stannis said. "He refuses to withdraw his men. He says the West will not be cowed by baying northerners and up-jumped clerks. Then we will have to cow him with iron, Ned said, and with men who hold it like something that can hurt them if they slip. Stannis lifted the letter and dropped it back. The Red Woman says I should strike at Renly first, to cut a flower before it goes to seed. The Onion Knight says cut the lion while its mouth is full. My own taste is to break the man who calls me up-jumped for standing where law says I must. We will split our strength if we try both. You will break at the weakest point, Davos said. Renly is a wind in summer. Tywin is a stone in a stream. One you can blow. The other makes the river find a new course. Ned watched the morning find the river. It took light and carried it downstream in lines that reminded him of hair combed by a patient hand. Robb will harry the West's van. Edmure will hold the forks if he can. If you keep the lion's eye on your spears and I lift a hand to keep the city from eating itself while you are gone, we can send a raven to Renly offering mercy if he folds his banners and comes home. He will not, but the letter will be read by men who like to read and do not like to fight. We will offer mercy, Stannis said, almost as if he did not mind. It will not be taken. Very well. I will move west with the fleet in support where it can be and a host by land where it cannot. You will hold the city. Keep your daughters safe. He stopped, as if he had stepped upon a thought and been halted by it. I will not have the Red Woman near the children, he added. She is useful and she is dangerous and I am not blind. Keep her near the ships. I will keep her near mine. If she seeks to take more, I will push her into the sea. Davos, behind him, made the smallest sound that might have been relief. The hours after that passed like a slow march with a cobble in the boot. Men shouted. Men saddled. Men sharpened. The chain across the river grew another 10 links and then another 10. A boy dropped a bucket down a well by accident and was beaten by his mother and then hugged by her so hard he could barely breathe. The High Septon sent a blessing for the host, and some old woman in a room too hot to breathe and muttered that if the gods had ever listened to him, they would have smote his rings off years ago. Varys spun his web closer around men with names no one else knew, and Littlefinger slid a coin into a palm that had not reached for it and smiled when it closed anyway. Jacelyn Bywater had 2 men dragged by the scruffs of their necks from a slophouse and showed them the mouth of the black cells and asked them if they liked the smell. They said they would prefer to smell their own wives. At sunset, Stannis took the steps of the Sept with a face that did not like ritual and would endure it as a man endures a rain that must be walked through to reach work. The choir sang. The city watched. Ned stood at his side, because that was where his oath set him. Renly's letter arrived at the very moment the crown would have touched Stannis' head if Stannis had permitted it. Instead, the crown remained in a Septon's hands and the letter opened in Davos's. Said, I am king. Bring your city to me or I will take it and make you kneel in your iron chair. It said, Marjorie Tyrell is a flower that will bloom in the light of my reign. Said, Stannis, come and take a lesson in joy. Stannis did not answer at once. He held the air in his chest as if tasting for smoke. He looked to Ned and did not ask for counsel in words. He did not have to. Ned inclined his head a fraction. Law would not bend. War would. Sing, Stannis told the Septon. The man blinked and lifted the crown. Not that, Stannis snapped. The other. The one about men going to their graves cheerful. Someone began a hymn about a river and it would do. When the song died and the last of the incense had been coughed from old throats, Stannis stepped down and did not take the crown from the cushion. I will wear it when I am done, he said. Not before. It will be heavy enough then. The city breathed out, half disappointed, half relieved. The Red Keep swallowed men and spit them out as riders. The fleet's lanterns lit like a constellation dragged low on a string. Ned went back to his tower and found Sansa reading the book he had left her. The corner of the page creased like a small victory. He said nothing about it. She did not look up. Far to the north, in a castle of black wood and harder scars, Jon Snow stood with Samwell Tarly and looked out over a land that had never paid much attention to kings. The raven on the maester's shoulder said, King, in a voice that sounded like a door hinge. Sam said, oh, and then, do you think, and did not finish. Jon looked at the trees and thought the world had changed somewhere a long way off, and the sound of it had reached them as a rumor and would arrive as a fact in its own time. He thought of his father alive, and the breath he took at that thought hurt in a place that had been cold so long he had forgotten it could. "Back to the yard," Ser Alliser Thorne said behind them, his voice like a raw edge. "Back to the muck. Kings die. Men dig." They went because a wall stands only if men do. Night came again, and with it a wind that changed. Came off the sea with a bite in it that promised storms. In the west, a lion set his camp where the river had once flooded and made the ground treacherous underfoot for men who did not watch where they put their heels. In the south, a king in a green mantle ate sweetmeats and counted banners and had a dream in which men laughed at him and woke liking it less than any he had had as a boy. In the east, a woman who had loved a king only when he hunted dreamed of a hall of mirrors where all the faces bore her eyes, and woke with her hand on her neck, surprised again to find it unbroken. In the city, Ned Stark lay on his bed, not sleeping, and saw two girls in brown cloaks under stars, and a boy with a bull's head hammered onto his helm like a promise, and a chain across a river that would hold as long as men did. He closed his eyes. He took the sleep that came. He was ready to be woken. He was woken by the bell. Not the bell of morning now, but the sharper, harsher bell that men ring when there is fire and a wind that will take it. He rose without thinking and strapped his sword on and was down the stair and across the yard and into a light that turned everything ugly. The fire was at the armory by the river, a skeletal flame that licked at timbers and climbed them with optimism. Men were already there with buckets. Davos shouted where to throw and made a line like a rope. The wind had mischief. It took plumes of spark and tossed them toward the chain and toward the ships. Men swore and slapped at their hair and laughed because fear and laughter make a good pair when they are married quickly. "Candles are cheap," Davos muttered to Ned when the worst of it had been tamed. "Oil is not." He bent and lifted a smoking rag with 2 fingers and sniffed it. "This smells like a kitchen, not a lantern. Someone spilled pork fat and got careless. Or someone's paid cook got careful," Ned said. He looked to Bywater, who was already pulling men out of the line and asking them their names and who they knew in the armory and where their mothers slept. Bywater would know by noon who had been paid, and by evening who had paid him. Whether the man could be found before he left the city by a gate that had not been watched hard enough was a different problem. At dawn, smoke hung along the river like low cloud. Stannis stood at the quay with his arms folded and watched the water carry ash down to the bay. He did not speak. Men who had worked all night stood and looked too, because there is a satisfaction in seeing the thing you fought become a memory. Ned stood, and for a moment he did not think of the next letter, the next bell, the next breath. He thought of water as the only honest thing in the city. Davos came to them with his boots muddy and his expression amused in a corner of the mouth. "Only one man tried to run," he reported. Bywater knocked him down with his truncheon and asked his name. The man gave the name of his mother. "I think he meant to be polite." "We will need more truncheons and fewer torches," Stannis said. "Make the orders so, Hand."
Ned nodded.
His leg ached. It would always ache now. He would go to the tower and scratch the order on vellum and press his seal and send it with a man who would flame it with his own breath when someone else tried to make him hand it over for coin. He would stand in a hall where men argued about which gods owned which words, and he would choose the ones that belonged to all men. He would go to the walls and look west. He would find the river and listen to it tell him what it had learned overnight. He would keep children safe because he had said he would. He would be the sort of man he wanted his son to be when he was not there to teach him. In the Red Keep, a cat jumped onto a windowsill and stared at a bird and did not leap because there was too much heat in the stone and cats dislike to burn their pads. In the Street of Steel, a smith hammered a link and a link and a link and felt each one as if it were a prayer that might be answered. In the Street of Sisters, a woman lit a candle before a little painted mother and asked for the sort of mercy that consists mostly of being forgotten. In the Sept, the High Septon took off his rings one by one and polished them with a cloth and told himself the gods were clean even when men were not. Beyond the King's Road's last good inn, Yoren's carts jolted through a rut and Sansa bit her cheek to keep from crying out. Arya walked backwards for a dozen steps to see if she could do it without stumbling, and did, and turned her head to grin at Gendry, who did not grin back but did not scowl either. A hawk lifted off a fence post and went up and up and up until even a girl in a ditch with sore feet could not follow it with her eyes. The morning went on. The road went with it. At Riverrun, a banner lifted that had not been lifted in anger in a generation. Men began to come in trickles and then in a stream, all of them talking at once and most of them saying the same thing differently. Lions in the fields, smoke in the hedges, boys growing pale in cellars, grain spoiled by fear. Edmure stood at the gate in armor that had not yet molded itself to his shoulders and told them there would be bread. There would be pikes. There would be a stand at the Red Fork that would make the river run backwards out of sheer surprise. He said it loudly. He would say it until he believed it. The realm settled into its quarrels as if into beds too small and too hot. It would not sleep well. It would dream sharp, and the morning would come and ask for more.